Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today's episode brought to you by my favorite sponsor, SunsetLakeSabadday.com. If you use the code Left is Best, you'll get 20% off. What do you get 20% off on? You get 20% off on all their gummies. They got gummies with cordyceps and lion's mane and ashwagandha mushrooms, different ones, for some for focus, some for relaxation. They got some with some THC and some Taltanine, along with the Sabadday. They also have just straight Sabadday gummies, but they also have tinctures. They have tinctures with melatonin. They have tinctures with Sabadday and Sabadday, which is their good night oil. It is my fave way to go to sleep. They have straight Sabadday as well. I'm actually dropping a little bit of that in my hair these days. Yeah, it helps. I don't know if it does. I think it does. But also they have salves and lotions with Sabadday. They have coffee and they have fudge with Sabadday. All of their Sabadday products are third-party tested, rigorous testing. You know exactly what's in it. You can find all that stuff on their website. They also have great farming practices. They practice integrated pest management. They don't use any pesticides. They use regenerative farming practices developed with the University of Vermont. They have great business practices. $20 minimum wage, but mostly an employee-owned company. And they are great political movement partners. They have donated thousands upon thousands of dollars to strike relief funds, refugee resettlement, carceral reform, Planned Parenthood, mutual aid. They've participated in the wake of the Vermont floods. They've given money to food pantries, on and on. Just an all-around great company, all-around a great product. SunsetLakeSabadday.com. Use the code Left is Best. They're longtime fans of the show. You get 20% off. Check them out, ladies and gentlemen. SunsetLakeSabadday.com. Do yourself a favor right now. Also, they make great gifts. Really do. And now, time for the show. Emma, take it away.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual... That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, August 2nd, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps, from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Heather Parton, also known as Digby. You'll hear a pre-recorded conversation with Heather and Sam. And then later, we will be joined live by Francesca Fiorentini, friend of the show, friend of mine, host of the Bitchuation Room. Also on the program today, American prisoners held by Russia touched down on U.S. soil as the Biden administration pulls off the largest prisoner swap with Russia since the Cold War. Republicans and Trump grumble about diplomacy being used. Harris leads Trump in the popular vote in 7 major national polls, less than 2 weeks into her candidacy. The campaign says she's raised $310 million in July, and 2/3 are reportedly from first-timers in 2024. The uncommitted movement is demanding to be heard at the DNC, wanting concrete answers from Harris. Job growth slows after months of gains. Hopefully it's an alarm bell for the Fed. It's time to cut rates. It's been way too long. UNRWA says the humanitarian situation in the West Bank is worsening, with Israel cutting off water and electricity there as well. The WHO reports that 500 out of 20,000 medical workers have been killed in Gaza. House Freedom Caucus Chairman Bob Good has officially lost his recount, losing to the Trump-backed opponent, because Good endorsed DeSantis early on in the presidential race, and Trump is a vindictive guy. Not sure if you guys have heard about that. And of course, the United States recognizes Maduro's right-wing opposition in Venezuela. This is the Guaido playbook, because it worked so well the first time.
More sanctions.
Sarcasm. In Nigeria, nationwide protests have erupted over poverty and corruption. Police have shot at least 2 people. And rest in power to the great James Baldwin, one of my favorite Americans. Well, I guess it's actually not rest in power, it's happy birthday. Both. James Baldwin would have turned 100 today. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is an majority-ish report-ish, because Sam is going to be talking to Digby. You'll hear that in just a second. We hadn't heard from her for a while, but Sam is out today, so he wanted to get that conversation out there for you guys. And it's just myself and Matt. Bradley's also out. So what do we call this? Dynamic duo?
Doesn't happen a lot, but yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, all right. Well, it's just
Friday.
We'll brainstorm it in the pre-recorded part. We'll have some fun today. Looking forward to talking to Francesca, but let's start here. We now have officially good news. I think a lot of people were holding their breath after this was announced, but it's official. The United States and Russia have pulled off the largest prisoner exchange since the Cold War. In December 2022, there was a prisoner exchange with Brittany Griner, and they sent back an arms trafficker, the United States, but that was a one-for-one kind of deal, if I'm remembering correctly. This included a lot of Americans. Russia released, I think, 16 people in total. And the Americans that returned home included Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, who has been detained since 2018, and Russian-American journalist Alsu Kurmashiva, and there were other, actually, like Russian activists who had been imprisoned for their political activism, who were a part of this exchange or the release deal as well. The hardest part of this was reportedly Putin demanding that they get back this guy, Vadim Krasikov. We'll get to him in a second. But here is Vice President Harris and Biden greeting the Americans released on the tarmac in Maryland late last night. So for the podcast audience, you see them walking up. And here's Paul Whelan shaking Biden's hand. There's Evan Gershkovich of the Journal. There's Harris hugging, and here he embraces his mother, apparently, which I can't even imagine what that must feel like. And then this is Alsu Kurmasheva, who's I guess a radio editor. Here, she reunites with her family.
There's nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I don't know who the hell we are. We're the United States of America.
Yes. Wow. Nothing beyond our capacity except for a ceasefire and an end to a genocide, but
Well,
I'm
that's the
going to
thing.
put that aside for a second. I mean,
I like when he said when we act together. I would not limit that to just like us, the United States, but maybe us as a world seeking solutions through diplomacy as opposed to things that say feed the bottom line of our defense contractors. Like this is great, and this also hopefully portends a shift towards maybe trying to negotiate an end to the conflict in Ukraine.
I think that it may, and a lot of experts, I think, are seeing this sign of cooling tensions as something that could be good for a peace deal in Ukraine, which now that war has gone into its third year at this point. And what was encouraging was the Wall Street Journal, who obviously has the inside track on this because of the fact that one of their reporters was detained in Russia and was a part of this exchange. They reported here that Kamala Harris reportedly played an integral role in these negotiations. I mentioned earlier Vadim Krasikov, who was one of the prisoners that was holding this up the most, because Krasikov had been convicted in Germany of killing a former Chechen rebel in Berlin in a park. And I guess Putin has some loyalty to this person. So it was holding things up because in Germany, the guy was a murderer. They didn't want to give him up. And I think
Same reason like the Republicans here don't want any sort of appeasement, they call it. That's the only lesson that any of those, frankly, modern fascists took from World War II is don't appease the enemy.
Exactly. And yet, Trump, we can get to that later, but he was like saying, oh, none of this would have happened. No one would even have gotten taken under my watch. Well, that Marine Whelan was captured in Russia in 2018. But here's what the Journal reports. Vice President Kamala Harris played a role in negotiations with allies to secure the prisoner swap deal. Harris met with both German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Slovenian Prime Minister Robert Golob separately in intimate settings during the Munich Security Conference in February to urge both leaders to push the deal through, according to a White House official. Harris's meeting with Scholz was particularly critical to securing the exchange because releasing Krasikov was a key Russian demand. The two first had a normal bilateral meeting before Harris asked Scholz to stay back for a, quote, restricted bilateral. The official said Harris asked everyone to leave except Scholz and one aide on each side. They had a back and forth about how to best move forward about that, but ultimately she was pressing Scholz to take action on this, the official said. Harris met Scholz previously on several occasions and had a good working relationship with him, the official said. That is, quote, part of the reason she was able to have a really good, frank conversation with him. That is actually extremely encouraging and raises some questions. Like, if this was happening in February, were there some questions about Biden's ability to continue to be president during that time? Was she taking on the larger, more active role because of those fears? How long were we aware of these fears? I mean, a month later was when she kind of was the first administration official to come out and say ceasefire for Gaza, which reportedly the administration watered down. So she was making her own moves, I think, for her own political future here quite smartly. But what I also like is that she was willing to have conversations and be diplomatic, because at the end of the day, this is what we should be engendering in foreign policy, especially when Democrats are in office. Diplomacy, 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 not war. Yeah. And so the fact that she was able to do this, I think, and then we have a report in the New York Times that came out saying like, oh, a lot of Ukrainians want a peace deal now. And it's like, okay, why is the Times publishing this now ahead of this prisoner exchange? It's because they want information out there to the public that a peace deal could be beginning to be negotiated, hopefully, and that there are Ukrainians who are war weary. I mean, same in Russia. They're conscripting men in like their 50s and I think up to 60 at this point.
Good.
It's not good. So if the Harris administration, if she wins, has more of this posture, I'll definitely take it.
This is a selling point for a generic Democrat. I mean, and which means like not Biden, where in the last months of his presidency, he's talking about how strong he kept NATO, but diplomacy, like Obama, the Iran deal, and Katrina vanden Heuvel had a very interesting interview on at Democracy Now, where she talked about how there's a feeling inside Russia, and you won't hear this from either the Maddow sect or the Trump is actually anti-imperialist sect, that Putin might want actually Kamala instead of Trump because of the ability to do sort of consistent business as opposed to the whims of maybe a sort of self-dealing, maybe opportunistic guy who is also has the neocons. Definitely, like we're in his first and we'll be in his second. And also we'd have to be remiss to say Kamala was also on another call recently, which is Biden pledging Israel's most recent right to defend itself as it, bombs people within Iran and stuff like that. So diplomacy is good, and that's a reason for Kamala over Trump if anybody needed one. But also, we need to see this applied, and we had the Jake Sullivan tears. It's like, can we have some tears for the families of Gazans too, please?
Right. I mean, that's a whole nother wormhole, right? But I agree with you on your perception of it. Vermont Ben writes in, Ukraine has always wanted peace. They did not start this conflict at all. There was a peace summit in June. They wanted another one. They want another one by November. No one said they started this conflict. I want to be clear. This was an act of Russian aggression, an imperial war started by them. But Ukraine has been the recipient of a lot of weapons from the United States. And
it's a problem if people start having to be conscripted into fighting it. And I know Russia does it too. That's not to say it, but it's just Russia has the capacity to do that more than Ukraine does. And facts have to be facts. Like I wanted a different side to win the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah.
The fact is that like there's a certain point where you have to stop letting people be killed into war conditions and try to fight the peace. And like you let it go on too far, then a lot of people die that could be helping try to fight whatever the crappy peace that gets settled is.
And this has nothing to do with, I mean, I'm not speaking about Ukraine. I don't know enough about their internal politics to say something about this, but I do know a lot about our internal politics. And we saw Hillary Clinton come out after Russia invaded illegally and immorally and say that this could be a real opportunity to weaken Vladimir Putin and his regime. And we have to be clear-eyed that there are forces within the kind of status quo national security blob that see that as an opportunity as well. But if Harris and Biden too, right, are interested more in diplomacy and negotiations to kind of end the bloodshed and the instability, after 3 years, I think that is a good sign. Especially if we're hearing this again from the Journal, which has intimate knowledge of what happened here because of Dershowitz. So good news on that front. All right. We will take a quick break, a word from one of our sponsors, and then we will have a conversation, or Sam will, with Heather Digby Parton.
Have you ever tried to browse in incognito mode? Well, it's probably not as incognito as you think. Google recently settled a $5 billion with a B dollar lawsuit after being accused of secretly tracking users in incognito mode. Google's defense: incognito mode does not mean invisible mode. In fact, all your online activity is still 100% visible to a ton of third parties. That is, unless, of course, you're like me and you use ExpressVPN. Want to thank ExpressVPN for supporting the Majority Report. And here's the deal. Visit expressvpn.com/majority and you can get an extra 3 months free. Without ExpressVPN, third parties can see every website you visit, even if you're in incognito mode. Your internet service provider, your mobile network provider, your admin of your Wi-Fi network. So Bradley, I can see where you're browsing during the show.
Gotta be careful
because I'm the admin. Unless, of course, you're using ExpressVPN, because what ExpressVPN does is it reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure encrypted servers, so third parties can't see your browsing history, and it's super easy to do. Look, here, all I got to do, I got to press this button, and I am connected. I can be in the New York location, or I got all these other options in terms of countries. If I want, And so if I wanted to just, see something on Netflix that wasn't, we don't need to go into that, but you know what I'm saying. But the important thing is it hides your IP address, makes it extremely difficult for third parties to track your online activity. It is super easy to use. Like I say, fire up your app, click one button, you are protected. ExpressVPN VPN works on all devices, iPhones, or I should say all phones, laptops, tablets, your smart TVs, your router, so you can stay private at home and on the go. And it's rated #1 by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/majority. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/majority. Check the website, majority.fm, and our podcast and YouTube for more information. And now back to Emma. Thank you, Emma. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Joining me, of course, she is the proprietor of the Uber blog Hullabaloo and the columnist at salon.com, Digby or Heather Parton. Heather, it's been a little bit of a while since we've talked. And things are dramatically different, I would say.
Absolutely. It feels like years, Sam. I think it's only been, a month or so, but it feels like years since we last spoke. A lot has happened in the past 10 years, otherwise known as a month.
I mean, we have had about a 2-week run there of I don't know where that little thumbs up came up. We had a 2-week run there where we had an assassination attempt. Well, I guess, if you want to extend it to the month, we had the debate, which completely essentially changed the tenor of how everyone was perceiving Joe Biden. And then we had an assassination attempt. And then we had the Republican National Convention. And then we had a Joe Biden dropping out. And then Kamala Harris essentially clearing the field. And I mean, aside from just like a sheer eventfulness, we say this almost every week now, or every time we talk. We've been having these type of conversations for 20 years, I think, on air at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember a 4-week period where 4.5 week period where things dramatically changed so much. And particularly like what we're seeing in terms of the polls, but I don't know where to start. Let's start with, I guess, let's start with the convention, because that was sort of like the densest period of time. I don't recall ever a political convention where the lead candidate and their vice presidential pick came out of it in worse shape than they went in, at least in terms of polling. 1968, I was barely sentient, but I was alive. But I mean, this is pretty stunning.
Completely stunning. And to be frank with you, unexpected as far as I was concerned, because going into the convention, we had the Sturm und Drang among the Democrats over Biden's debate performance, whether he was going to stay in, people pushing him to get out, going through that whole thing. And so the Democrats, I thought, were just, in a terrible situation. I mean, and we were, it was awful. And then there was the assassination attempt. And I thought, oh, Trump is going to be waving the bloody shirt and the country will rally around. And if you observe the mainstream media, right after the assassination attempt, going into the convention, they were beside themselves. Oh, this is the most, horrible thing that's ever happened. We must condemn the violence and blah blah blah, which was, just a softball throw to Trump going into his convention, and then he shows up with the bandage on his ear and this whole thing. I I expected that he was going to come out with a substantial bump. I really did. I thought he was going to do it. Now, even with the choice of JD Vance, which I thought was stupid, and I said it at the time, I wrote about it. I'm going, this was not a good choice. He had many other options that were better than this, and he went with the worst choice that he had. But even with that, I thought he would come out with a big bump, and he didn't. And I mean, this just sort of reinforces the idea that Trump has a ceiling, and that nothing he does can actually take him above that ceiling. So everything, in terms of him winning, has to be about, suppressing the polling for the other side, and maybe third party, kind of, interference in that sense. But I'm telling you, I was very surprised. Having said that, it was the worst convention I've ever seen.
It was
absolutely appallingly bad.
It was, let's just talk about that for a moment, because there was a couple of things I was trying. I mean, the speech itself was absolute garbage.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
just absolute garbage. He didn't, like, even from his perspective, they had it in their mind clearly, and they have doubled down on this since, that the way they were going to win was to rack up the number of male votes they could get.
Yes.
They were going totally on this gender split. A couple of weeks ago, there was some polling that showed in the younger cohort, I don't think it was 18 to 24, maybe it was, that there was a huge gender split, and Trump was winning quite well. I mean, big, like I'm talking like 20, 30 points in terms of men at that age. Now, I don't know how sustainable that was, and how much of that was a function of Biden as opposed to, if that's changed.
Yeah.
But let's just, for the sake of argument, assume that that is what that was their broader strategy, not just that age cohort, but just across the board. It certainly felt like that was their strategy. I mean, they have all these wrestling figures on, which was bizarre. And then the other thing that really struck me over the course of 2 or 3 of those nights, you don't usually see the nominee there in the convention. And this was more reminiscent of like a Roman like a Roman Colosseum, where they were all
right.
like going by on chariots, and
he's up there doing this and this.
exactly, tipping their hat to the Caesar.
Yeah.
And I found that very, very strange. And I don't know if it wasn't for, the moment, I think, like where he blew a kiss to Hulk Hogan. And that's when it really felt like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what this is. Like the knight, or not the knight, but the warrior,
the gladiators.
They were slain the podium, I guess. And the king, Caesar, like throws his handkerchief down or whatever. It was really just a bizarre show.
Very strange.
And then Vance, I mean, I had predicted Vance only because Vance came with a tremendous amount of money. I am quite convinced that Elon Musk was there because of the Vance pick, not because of the assassination attempt. Peter Thiel is in there, Andreessen and Horowitz and all the crypto money. I mean, on day one, after picking Vance, he raised $500 million. Now, they didn't make a big show of it because it wasn't in the way that like you get fundraisers type of stuff. It was more like, all right, I've secured, in the same way that David Koch, I think it was, bought his way onto the Libertarian ticket back in 1982, like literally became the vice president. Or I guess RFK's vice president too. I don't even know her name. But it was her money that got her there.
Yeah.
And then things just completely implode for Vance, because this guy has no, I mean, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Like, I think there is a knock on Kamala Harris that she has never really established any real positions that seem to be solid and cast in
Mhm.
iron. But JD Vance is even like worse, and like he's done
Oh my God.
180s, not 90 degrees. Like I'm for this, and now I'm against it. But from like I'm for this, and now I'm for the exact opposite. Like I don't know, Hitler, in his words.
Exactly. And it's a total change in worldview. This isn't just, tweaking your policies to try and appeal to certain constituencies within your coalition, which is what, politicians do, rightly or wrongly. Some of them do it more clumsily than others. This is, I'm kind of a liberal, never Trumper, libertarian kind of guy, very antagonistic toward Trump and the MAGA people. Within a year or two, he is suddenly their avatar. I mean, it's so abrupt and so incredibly obvious and so calculated that he did this. And that I can't believe anybody would take him seriously on either side because nobody knows what he is. I mean, he is like an empty vessel. Now, when you're looking now, as people are looking at him, and I think it is good to kind of take a look at him because I think it's a very interesting part of what's going on in Trump world and in the MAGA movement, is that this guy is he he brings with him all the money. And that's
Yep.
just, I agree with you completely. That is the primary objective here. There's a bunch of money there, and these guys are all kind of crazy. I mean, they really are. That group of tech bros, Peter Thiel and Andreessen and the rest of them, I mean, they're kind of nutty. And there's a lot of stuff out there that people should read about these guys
Oh, Peter
because
Thiel is a complete lunatic. I mean,
it's out of their mind. Yeah.
Straussian, anti-democrat. I mean, not not implicitly anti-democratic,
No.
explicitly anti-democratic,
Yeah.
because he has on record saying that I believe, one of the problems with democracy is you start to give the vote to people like women.
Yeah.
And I'm not, again, I am barely paraphrasing. I think this is pretty you give he said one other group of people,
Hmm.
and I imagine it's not white men. But you give the vote to them, and then the next thing you know, you got socialism. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay.
He
Uh,
said that. No, he did say that.
we
And
should
they
be so
said things
lucky, in my estimation, but
right.
it is a interesting
If
perspective.
only, if
Yep.
only that
Yep.
actually was how it worked. But no, I mean, I mean, the things that these guys believe in, I mean, and they've got some weird utopian stuff. They're building special techno cities that they will be running like their own little fiefdoms and creating some kind of utopian techno vision. I mean, they're out there. They're very much out there. And Vance is one of their creatures. He is one that they've groomed to sort of carry that message, and he was designed to go into politics because of this. But he personally is a cipher. I think he's an instrument of those people, and he is a very very unskilled politician. Let's just put it that way. He is not good at this. And they did not vet that part of him because I don't think they cared. I think at the time this was happening, I mean, all the stories were that Trump was listening. I thought he might pick Doug Burgum. They'd be the businessman ticket. He's a billionaire. I'm a billionaire. We'll make y'all billionaires. I mean, I thought that might be, I
Right.
mean, it's stupid, but it makes some sense. Marco Rubio, he's Latino, maybe he brings in something. He's maybe an establishment guy that the suburban moms might think is cute or something. I mean, none of this is, I mean, they're all horrible and they're all useless, but they had some
I just
logic.
think almost there was a lot of logic to bringing on somebody who would be a foil for Donald Trump in that respect, but it's also completely contrary to. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the thing that I think is fundamental about Donald Trump. His racism is real. I mean, and
Oh, absolutely.
it is so real that he won't even it won't even trump what might be, forgive the pun, his own best interests.
Yeah.
I mean, the
He can't
smartest
help
pick for
himself.
him,
Yeah.
no, the smartest pick in the world would have been to him to pick, a Latino, a person of color,
Tim
a
Scott, something.
woman.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
all of those things, and that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just never going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, there was no other choice. We knew it was going to be a white man, and I thought there were a few. I mean, party's full of them. I mean, he had some to choose from. Picking Vance though was just, I mean, he went with the
It was money.
choice of it was money, and I think they were at that point. I think at the point where he was making the final choice there. I mean, Rupert Murdoch reportedly flew people in to beg him not to pick Vance. I mean, to beg him not to do it. And to pick Burgum was his choice. He thought that would be great. He came to the convention himself, Rupert did. And what is he, 112? I mean, I don't think flying around is that. He shows up to try and convince him to do it. And Trump just could not do it. He needed that money. He wanted that money.
Yep.
And I think he also wanted he and all the MAGA people around him, including his sons, Tucker Carlson, that whole group, they convinced themselves that going with a hardcore MAGA message was the way to win. And they thought they had it won, I think, at that point when the convention started. They were convinced that it was done. For some unknown reason, they did not believe that Joe Biden would drop out. And I have to assume that it's because Donald Trump couldn't imagine ever dropping out himself, that no one would ever do that. So he just did that. So it was a very, very strange and odd
to
convention.
be fair, I mean, to be fair, but I mean, to Trump, it did seem after the assassination attempt like the brakes were going to be put on the move to get rid of Biden. Now, what it ended up being was they were just put on pause for about 3 days. I mean, Biden, the irony of the whole thing is that Trump was done in by that assassination attempt, because had that attempt not happened, I'm quite convinced that Biden would have been, he would have been gone by the beginning of that convention.
Right. I agree with you.
As opposed to the end. And they may have made a different pick. Now, the problem that they would have had is like Doug Burgum, Biden drops out, and then you look at these two guys, and they're like the two guys up in the rafters of the Muppet Show.
Yeah, exactly.
All of a sudden, right? Like,
right,
I mean,
you're right.
The problem that Donald Trump had, it seems, and to be clear, Donald Trump can win this election still. I mean, I want to just make this absolutely clear, but I don't think it's going to be. It's not the foregone conclusion that it felt like it was before the convention. And, there is going to be, regardless of whether he shoots somebody on Fifth Avenue, there's going to be 46% of the country minimum who are going to vote for him. Yeah. And then it's, there literally is such a tiny little contingency in the middle because of the Electoral College. I happen to think that Kamala Harris is probably going to get more votes. At least the spread is going to be greater than it was for Biden. I don't know if the total of votes is going to be greater. But I think the spread is going to be more. But the problem is that once Biden drops out, and this also was the case with Vance, because had he picked somebody like Burgum, they would both look old. But the whole strategy that Biden had was, we're going to run on this is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump. And the problem was, of course, after the debate, it became a referendum on Joe Biden.
Right.
Once Vance is in there, all of a sudden the needle moves a little bit and it becomes a referendum a little bit on Vance, because everybody's, it's all baked into the cake, Donald Trump. But how can you sort of like get some mileage talking about Vance? And then as soon as Biden drops out, it immediately reverts back to a referendum, and not just on Trump, but on Vance now. Because, if it was Burgum, everybody would be like, we're going to still talk about Trump. But Vance became this surrogate for Donald Trump criticism that was fascinating. And it turns out like he helped sort of like, I guess, midwife this whole weird thing, which is, I know you must be enjoying this as much as
oh my God,
are
you kidding? It's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing. And I absolutely love it that I think there was an organic aspect to this, where once it got started, and I guess they're giving credit to Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor. I don't know. Is that true? Or?
Well, Emma did some digging and found that back in 2019 and 2020, Kamala Harris was running against, was referring to Donald Trump as weird.
Really?
And I suspect what happened is Walz, and I want to talk about this aspect too, because it's crazy. We have like a primary going on for the vice presidency, but one of the most sort of productive and effective primaries that could ever exist. But I think what happened is Walz was out there
Uh-huh.
trying to, lobby for
Sure.
himself as
Oh,
vice
for sure.
president. We should say this is going to air. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon. It's going to air on Friday. We may know who the vice
Right.
president is by this time. Walls, I think, went back, looked at how she was running before.
Ooh,
And
smart guy.
this is my guess. This is my
Could
guess.
be.
I don't
No,
know. This is
could
what
be.
we were talking in the office, and may have said, okay, I'm going to use weird because, I'm trying to. I have an audience
Sure.
of one and then millions,
Right.
and so, but regardless, it stuck.
It was brilliant. And the way, I mean, however it started, it sort of came out of that and then just kind of caught on instantly. And they started doing really clever, you know, fun. I mean, I think it was Rick Perlstein who said on Twitter, he sort of popped in at some point and said, you know, it's good when politics is fun. And it's especially good when it's for people on our side because it's been so
Yeah.
incredibly awful for so long with Donald Trump just dominating everything and even Biden having a successful presidency in many ways that we didn't anticipate. Even that there's never been this moment of just, kind of great, sort of happiness about the politics of it because it's just been a slog no
I feel
matter
like
what
we
you say.
had about a month after the American Rescue Plan
Yeah,
was
that was
passed
it.
in February of 2021. I mean, I
Yeah,
remember you and
right.
I were talking. We're
Yeah,
like,
we're going, yay,
oh my
go.
gosh, they're talking about Dr. Seuss, and the Democrats
Right,
just passed $2 trillion worth of,
right.
benefits to people
Yeah,
practically.
yeah. Wow, childcare tax credits. I mean,
Yep.
it was very, that was a moment of sort of unexpected, upbeat positivity in politics. And we just have not had any of that in so long. I mean, really, you go back to the original Obama campaign, I think is
Right.
the last time anybody
Yep.
felt, that kind of joy. And I'm not suggesting it's the same now, but there was, I think, I mean, my theory on this is what happened was that debate was just, I mean, it was one of the most devastating political events I have ever lived through. It was stunningly awful. And it scared the living hell out of me because from that moment, I just realized everything's changed. And whatever I thought was possible in this race is, I don't know if it's going to. And I wrote the next day, I said, I don't know if he's going to drop out. I mean, I put it on the table and said, let's not sugarcoat it. This was horrible. And if he does, we're going to have to grapple with what comes next. And my view was, and I don't know if you guys agreed with this, but my view, and in my column, I wrote, I think we don't have time to go through a huge process. So we have to,
100%.
come in. Let's all get together. Let's do this right. Let's be, professional. Let's be organized, and let's just get through this moment. If he drops out, we're just going to have to, really, we can't play any games here. We can't do it. We don't have time. And so, but it was a devastating moment to me. I mean, I really felt like, oh my God, Donald Trump is really going to win. And that scared me to death. So going through that 3 weeks of hell that we went through, trying to figure out what was going to happen and the assassination attempt or whatever, when he dropped out, it was like the relief of finding out that the biopsy is benign. It's one of
Right.
those kind of moments where you just go, oh my God. And what that brings you is this great sense of possibilities, and life looks so much brighter, and everything just kind of, and that's what happened. And I think it just spurred some creativity on the Democratic side that I haven't seen. And that's rhetorical creativity. I mean, look at these videos of these guys doing the, white dudes for Kamala, or the black women for Kamala, these phone calls, these Zooms that they're doing. I mean, everybody just sounds, excited and happy. And it's
I
just
mean,
not something I've seen very much.
I think it is that we moved into to a different generation of politicians who were
Yes.
dominating this discourse, who fundamentally understand. I mean, ideologically, they're all over the place, I think, to a certain extent, but they fundamentally understand that the first thing they have to be is partisan. That
Yes.
they cannot, the idea that we have to show respect to these people
Right.
as a sort of baseline and then
Hmm.
make the criticism. I think that is
Right.
just not that was something that was frankly from an earlier generation, for
Hmm.
people who basically cut their teeth in politics in the, 80s and 90s.
Oh,
and
60s and 70s,
well,
some of them,
60s and
yeah.
70s, I mean, I think, but really sort of like who their politics were defined in the wake of the McGovern loss. And,
Right.
and,
I,
and
I
so
see.
much
Yeah, I
was
see what
that,
you're saying. Yeah.
and that became the idea of like, we need to be respectable. We
Mm-hmm.
need to be the adults in the room. We have to sort of like throw off this sort of like coat of hippiedom,
Right.
and that dictated so much, and that is gone now. We do not
Yeah.
have a represent, Chuck Schumer almost was like mentored by these people, but
Mhm.
he's just he's a little bit sort of like,
I would say Dick Durbin is the perfect
well,
example of that.
yes, Dick Durbin still remains.
Yeah.
There's definitely a couple leaders in the Senate, but they're not,
No, they're not dominant anymore.
they're
They're not
not
dominant.
dominant.
Yeah.
Dick Durbin, aside from him, putting the brakes on the ability to put more judges on the court, Dick Durbin is not dictating the
No,
tenor of the politics of the Democratic
not at
Party.
all.
Neither is Pelosi, for that matter,
No.
or Hoyer, or none of these people,
Yeah.
and or the Clintons, for that matter,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Agreed.
were a little bit better on partisanship, frankly, than a lot of them. But I think that's why you also get this type of
Yeah.
thing. I just don't think the politicians of 10 years ago on the Democratic Party had the constitution that would allow them to say these people are weird.
Right. Well, look at Tom Friedman. I mean, Tom Friedman, the avatar of all the sensible liberals in the world, supposedly, wrote a column saying Democrats are going to regret saying that calling the Republicans weird.
Oh, I didn't see that, but that
Oh,
completely
he's
tracks.
yeah, totally tracks. He's the guy, and he's out there saying, "Oh no," and all the New York Times, people are at Twitter going, "Oh my goodness." Well, it's ridiculous. I mean, that's not the world we're living in, and calling them weird is an extremely successful political move. It is
Totally.
absolutely successful, and it's energizing to our side, freaking out their side. I
They
mean,
well, they
they
have no
do.
response to it because they
They don't know
don't.
what to do.
Well, the problem is they don't really know why they're weird. Like you and I both come from sort of like a milieus where, you know, weird is actually an attribute, like a positive
Yeah.
attribute. And that's because those people know they're weird.
Hmm.
They know why they're weird and they take pride in it. These people do not know why they're weird. They don't know why it's weird to say, women, who don't have children in families, and women really shouldn't be, full citizens if they, I mean, they don't know why it's weird. They,
No.
they,
Well, there's
they're
fun
responding
weird.
it, huh? They're
There's fun
defensively.
weird, and then there's creepy weird, and they're
Ex-
creepy weird.
exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
And it's been incredibly effective. All right, let's just talk, I mean, briefly about like this. And the amazing thing is the polls are all reflecting this. Like
Yes.
everything has flipped. Her favorability rating flipped.
Hmm.
And one of the things, that I will say that not only did we agree with you that there was just the idea of like a mini primary was both stupid as a practical matter, stupid as a political matter, and also stupid as a small d democratic matter. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not a real democracy to have
No.
like, it's the closest thing you could get is the person who, was the backup to voted to be the backup
81
of the,
million people voted for the backup, and it turned out we
ex-
needed a backup. So
exactly. And so, but the other thing is that, and I think this, we can talk a little bit more about Kamala Harris's, sort of positions and whatnot, but they just don't know how to deal with race. And, like
God.
they were able to sort of promote a threat of misogyny with Hillary Clinton I think for two reasons. One, because I think misogyny is just much more casually accepted
Hmm.
in our society. But they had a 30-year sort of
Right.
like exhibition game, essentially, to create narratives that were where the misogyny was subtextual.
Hmm.
They did
Right.
not have the time to do this with Kamala Harris. And so they start off with the DEI stuff. They literally, I mean, day 2 or 3 of her presumptive, even candidacy, they're having to have a meeting that is publicly reported where they're saying, don't be overtly racist or misogynist. Like, that's insane. That is insane that you need to do that. And they did need to do that, and it didn't work
Right.
because they had nothing else to talk about.
Yeah. And that's
And
their thing. I mean, this is their thing. DEI is their thing. This is what they've been saying it over and over again on Fox News. It's been Tucker Carlson's, sort of, fundamental argument for years now. I mean, this is what they do. It starts CRT, DEI. They've always got some woke. I mean, this is their culture war. They don't know how to do any politics that isn't that. And the fact that they had to do this in a meeting at the House of Representatives. I mean, these were the professional elected politicians had to say, hey, ixnay on the EEI day, stop it. Stop doing that. And of course they couldn't. And of course, Donald Trump, as you said earlier, he just is a racist to his bones. He is a misogynist to his bones. He's been found liable for rape and defamation of a woman. He's been accused of, we heard what he said, on the Access to Hollywood tape. So the misogyny's there and the race is there. This thing he pulled this week at the National Association of Black Journalists was unbelievable. I mean, I think he did it on purpose. It's obvious that they had this ready to roll out, this idea that she's not real. He wants to do a Pocahontas thing, right, with her. She's not real. She's faking her blackness. And it'll work with some people on Fox. They'll also, she's not a real black woman, whatever. But
well, they did this with Obama too.
Yeah, of course. It's the birther thing.
And yeah.
And it's the birther thing. He's not legit. This is not a legitimate person. She's a phony. She doesn't, in fact, JD Vance came out and said, well, she's a complete phony. The chutzpah of JD Vance, of all people, coming out, well, she's a chameleon. Nobody really knows who she is. And I'm going, oh my God, Mr. I know you are, but what am I, JD Vance? Because there's a guy who's truly a chameleon.
Well, the problem is, again, they don't have a narrative that the phony thing backs into. I mean, it actually, could have more resonance with, I think, like sort of like the most progressive elements of the Democratic Party. But like, she's a phony what? Like, she's a phony what? The only thing they have brought
phony
out
black woman.
that she's a phony black person, and like, there's no, with when they tried this, and they tried this with everybody, right? I mean, like the Slick Willie, they did it with Bill Clinton. And the idea with Slick Willie was that he doesn't really care about you.
Right.
But the sort of like incredibly fortuitous thing about this is there is no sort of like a predicate for who Kamala Harris is. And everyone was waiting for just something that wasn't going to give them license not to vote against Donald Trump.
Right.
So like, and she is doing that. Like, in fact, I think there was a quote from Willie Brown, who, has been out of touch, but they try and bring it back because apparently they slept together, 40 years ago or something like this. And he said, my advice would be for her to not take any positions. And which, as a progressive who wants to begin to like, shift the, and box her in on certain positions, frankly, I am, it's an anathema to me, but as someone who wants Donald Trump to lose and thinks that's, vitally crucial, I think that happens to be probably the best electoral strategy. Make this about Donald Trump and JD Vance. And that's where we are. I mean, they're going to try the phony thing, but Donald Trump let the cat out of the bag. Now, every time that they see phony, he's already provided the subtext.
Exactly.
And, like it's fascinating to see how bad they are at this when, it's not like sort of a surprise, and they have somebody who can at least just sort of like not be the story, which Joe Biden couldn't be.
Right.
But let's talk about the VP, and then we'll come back around to Kamala Harris, because she's backed off 2 or 3 key positions that she had in that 2020 race, 2019-2020 race. But let's talk about this VP thing, because I've never seen anything like this either. I mean, all this stuff that we're doing we're watching is pretty unprecedented, but we are watching a primary for the vice presidency where it's as if like it reminds me of like one of those like contests, when you were a kid, it was like, I don't know, like the boys club or something, or the girls club would say like, send in your favorite catchphrase, that the boys club's going to advertise for. And so like nobody's in competition with everybody, but there are in competition, but you're not going right at your competitors. You're just like coming up with the best way to, advertise for the boys club or whatever it was at that time. And that's what seems to be going on here. Maybe you hear these dribs and drabs and people dropping, negatives on people into the press that'll never be, the fingerprints will never be seen again. But that's what seems to be going on. And it's fascinating and it's incredibly effective. Like, I would love to figure out, like, how can we put this into effect, for future races? Because you're just like a pilot program for how do you attack the Republicans.
Yeah. And it's great because it turns out that there are a lot of really, pretty talented politicians that are in this, that are competing for the best catchphrase and, of course, selling themselves in the process. And, people have been saying for a long time, this was happening, during the Biden period, when he was running. One of the things that everybody was saying was you need to get surrogates out there. And the idea is that these surrogates were necessary because he was, kind of incapable of sort of selling his record and selling the future and selling his agenda. But they weren't doing it. I mean, you had Gavin Newsom, you had some others, but really, for the most part, this just wasn't happening. So all of a sudden, what happens is VP race starts, comes up in this sort of weird sort of moment. And all these people come out and they're great surrogates. I mean, they're really, really good. Even the ones who aren't in the running, like I thought that Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, on that call the other night, he was on the Zoom call for the white dudes for Kamala. And he said, he was funny. I mean, he was really funny. He said, well, I'm doing another Zoom right after this. It's going to be, what was it? Couches are, couches against Trump. It was couches against Trump, the couch thing.
Right.
And then he said, we call it cats, which, I mean, it's just funny. And yes, it's insidery, it's online, it's all this thing, but you need some of that to get people interested and also to sort of show that these guys are, they're quick. They're not, living in another world. They're living in the world that we're all living in. And you have Walsh, you have Shapiro, you've got Bashir, you've got Kelly down in Arizona, all of whom have certain qualities, some I like more than others, I mean, and I'm not quite sure what her criteria is going to be because it all depends on how they want to position this ticket. And maybe they want somebody young and vital. And, I mean, I think it's pretty clear it's going to be a white guy. I'd be very surprised if they didn't pick a white guy, but
it is a total DEI pick. Right. I mean, we know that.
We know that, yeah.
There is no women who are being included in this. No. Gretchen Whitmer is out, even though she would be a great candidate. I think, maybe the strongest, frankly, of all of them. But it's a DEI pick. Mm-hmm. You don't see Wes Moore in there because only white guys. It is a DEI pick, just like Joe Biden was a DEI pick as well at that time.
Maybe all political leaders are DEI picks
on some fashion. It's just that we have expanded who gets included, what diversity means. It's no longer we have a white guy from Massachusetts, we're going to need a white guy from Texas, and now it's actually you could have some other sort of other qualifications. They don't just have to be white guys from different geographical locations. But what I also, one point I want to make that I think you raise here in terms of the bench. The difference between 2024 and 2014, in 2010, Barack Obama, the Democrats got slaughtered on that off-year election.
Yes,
and over the course of Barack Obama's presidency, Democrats lost 1,000 elected positions across the country, governorships, state treasurers, attorney generals, state senators, state assembly people. I mean, across the board, the
Yep.
Democrats got wiped out. In 2018, I should say in 2022 and 2018 for that matter, people like Bashir, Shapiro, Whitmer,
Yep.
Pritzker. In fact, all of the
All
people,
of them.
Kelly, like all of the people in the running right now,
Yep.
all came in these off-year elections where Democrats had gotten traditionally wiped out. And so now you have like, you're
Yep.
building up the minor leagues again, as it were,
Yep.
and all of these potential leaders in the future. And we get a better notion of like, how, where their politics are.
Yeah.
And so that is a fascinating thing to see. I
Yes,
mean,
it
it is one of the things that I think like maybe from a historical perspective, people are going to compare, Biden's presidency versus Obama's. Now, a
Yeah.
lot of this also has to do with like the era and changes within the Democratic Party in the country.
Trump. Yeah. There's a lot of
Trump. I mean, there's a lot of other factors, but it is definitely a huge issue that
huge.
second order issue that we're seeing now. The implications of it.
And wouldn't you say too, just not to digress too much, but that would have the same effect on the courts, because having a Democrat in there able to get the to compete with the with the just the federal judiciary being able to put people in there over time, that's probably going to show
Oh my gosh!
as
Well,
being as being an advantage.
It's gonna be muted to a certain extent because of the venue shopping that we're seeing now, where everybody's
True,
going
yeah.
down. Oops, sorry, don't mean to thumbs up there. I
It's a
don't know how to
thumbs up.
turn that off. But with the venue shopping that we're seeing, where they're all going to the one judge in Texas at this point. But over time, we're definitely going to see that, and you're also going to see it in the context of, particularly one of the things that Biden has done, fantastically, and we'll talk about this, and hopefully, like, it'll be in the context of, Donald Trump is not president or president-elect and whatnot, but not only has Biden, put the pedal to the metal in terms of getting justices on the court, and they took this very seriously, and they had all the nominations ready to go, basically so that the Senate wasn't waiting on them in the way that the Senate was
Right.
waiting on Obama. But the diversity, and I don't mean just in terms of like, race or gender, but I'm also talking in terms of like the type of law that is
Yes.
practiced. We have more civil rights lawyers who have become
Public
judges,
defenders,
public
yeah.
defenders who have become justices, even like plaintiff attorneys who have become judges. And what that does, the second order impact of that is people in those positions begin to, don't stay away from those jobs in society because they think it's a dead end in terms of like ultimately becoming
Right.
a judgeship. I mean, it was for a long time, like, you have to join the Federalist Society or you're in trouble.
Right.
If you're a member of the American, the AJC, I can't remember what it stands for, but the liberal version of the Federalist Society, that was a liability during the
Yeah.
Obama years. And so it has knock-on impacts. Do you have a favorite vice presidential, or do you have one that you think that is a bad pick?
I have a favorite, but he's not going to get chosen. It would be Pete Buttigieg, who I think is a
Really?
pretty brilliant. Yeah, I think he's
Okay.
a pretty brilliant. Not in terms of policy necessarily, but just in terms of his. I think he's a very, very talented communicator. So I like the idea of seeing that, but he's not going to get chosen. And I don't really have a favorite. I think Josh Shapiro has some baggage that could be potentially hurtful in the coalition that is not necessary to do. I'm not, I know that he's got a positive in terms of Pennsylvania, but I think, and Tim Walz, I just think is just a terrific guy. I just have to say, I really, really like him. But the one thing I think they may be leaning toward Bashir, because when you see the picture of those two, the youthful kind of ticket there, the contrast between that and youthful experience, a lot of gravitas in terms of their experience and abilities compared to Trump and the weirdo freak show that he chose. I think that might be the strongest ticket.
I've been if I had to have bet, I would have been betting on Bashir, and I still would. I mean, I'm with you on Shapiro. Aside from my political issues with Shapiro, the education people, just people who believe that you should use the state to crack down on a particular ilk of protesters.
Yeah.
Also, and then just, more specifically, people who are invested in care about what's happening in Gaza and our Israel policy.
It's
and
just
there's
too
also
acute,
some weird Me Too stuff that is sort of like second order, may not be
Oh,
fair.
I didn't even know that.
Well, he supposedly was very slow, if not sort of a little bit cover-uppy for a staff member who had a a Me Too issue.
It wasn't him.
No, it wasn't him.
Hope, God knows.
And that, there may be other stuff, but that seems to me to be enough to let's not make the ticket.
We don't need to.
You
There's so many other good people.
Here's the other thing that people don't talk about. In addition to, Shapiro's, he's got a 49% approval rating in Pennsylvania. That's good. It's not bad. And he won big, but he also won big off against a really bad candidate. Let's be clear on that too. I mean, was it Mastriano was his name, or I can't remember exactly, but I mean, he was bad. I mean, he was bad. He was one of the worst.
Let's talk weirdos. Yeah.
Total weirdo. And, Kentucky, they call that area Pennsyltucky, or at least, some people do. Andy Bashir, you don't hear this much. He has the highest approval rating of any Democratic governor in the entire country. It's somewhere around 75%.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh my God.
75% in Kentucky.
Mitch McConnell's home state. Yeah.
For whatever reason, you just don't hear that much. But his approval rating is through the roof in Kentucky.
Amazing.
And, I think they tried him out in Forsyth County in Georgia, which is an area where Kamala Harris, no Democrat, will ever win. But I think, there's two elements of this. Is one, you run up those numbers in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But you control the margin in which Donald Trump wins in places like Forsyth County if you want Georgia, and Kamala Harris can run up the number in Atlanta.
Yeah.
There's no Josh Shapiro's not coming into Atlanta and adding to her vote tally.
No, you're right. You're right. That makes sense. Yeah.
They're looking for a contrast, and the best, and it's a DEI pick again. Send that DEI pick to those places where Kamala Harris is not going to go, and
he could challenge Vance's claim to this Appalachian, regular guy
100%.
thing, because Bashir's from Kentucky, for crying out loud.
Yep.
And I think he has the ability. He seems to be sharp. I mean, I don't know him that well, but I know he's been very successful.
In addition to being one of the most popular governor, or if not the most popular Democratic governor in the country, maybe second, but I think he's first. Walz could be up there too, I would imagine, but he's in a blue state.
Yeah, totally different.
He has enfranchised something like 190,000 voters in that state, in Kentucky.
Wow.
I mean, I have no other sense of his politics. He's been in a red state, and he could be, more conservative than I would want, or he could be one of these people like, I'm a progressive, running in a red state, and so I'm gonna, get where I can and
he saved Obamacare. I know he saved Obamacare there in Kentucky. I mean, that's pretty important real life accomplishment in a red state. Everybody else is dying on the vine, So.
All right, let's lastly just talk about this. The elephant in the room a little bit, at least for progressives. I bring this up. First, let me just say, I am glad Kamala Harris is the nominee. I don't know that we could have gotten any other nominee who I may have thought was been better, in terms of where their politics are. I don't think we could have gotten a better one with a better chance to win, because of the process, of how it all went down. But one of the things that as progressives we want to do is not get it caught up in the way that we did with Obama, This is my feeling, because
Absolutely.
everybody thought Obama was going to be this, sort of progressive bastion. And on day one, nobody rang this clarion call more than you did. He wanted to cut Social Security. It feels like yesterday, but it was 2008. I remember when you
Hard to
would
believe,
cite
yeah.
that interview from January when he would talk about entitlement reform. I mean, I remember this 16 years later,
Yeah.
Heather, like you were talking about this. And so, what I'm seeing with like the pushback from some corners on the Lena Khan stuff, because they're coming for
That's
Lena
legit.
Khan.
Yeah, I know. That's
And,
legit.
and now she has disavowed the jobs guarantee she ran on in 2020. She has disavowed Medicare for all, which she ran on in 2020. She's disavowed the fracking ban. Now, to be fair, I don't know that there was a lot of people who were excited about her pick that knew that she had these positions in the first place. But I guess the point is, there is a real fear that she is going to return to the sort of neoliberalism that we saw from Obama, because Joe Biden, regardless of of what happened on a foreign policy standpoint, he changed the nature of democratic politics.
Yes.
At least in many ways, it was a return. What do progressives do right now with this sort of like dual mandate? Like we're all like the Fed, like unemployment and inflation and this and that.
Right.
And they secretly only care about inflation, in my estimation. But what do we do with this sort of like this tension between? I think it is absolutely essential that Donald Trump lose. Absolutely essential. What is the right perspective in which to engage Harris on these things, and the perspective that, like, how do you maintain enthusiasm on one hand so you can defeat Donald Trump, but also keep in foreground, like, we got work to do here.
Absolutely. Well, I think, honestly, one of the great benefits that we have is that there isn't very much time left. So a lot of this argument there's just not enough time to really hash it out. So we're all stuck with this situation here where we're going to have to make this decision. Are we just going to go all in and just, take it on faith or whatever, that she is going to, follow more in the Joe Biden model, which is kind of surprising us with liberal and progressive policies that maybe we didn't expect? Or is she going to be Obama, where it's a big disappointment because he's trying to compromise with Republicans? I tend to think, I mean, and I'm trying not to be too optimistic. And as you say, I think I have some credibility, because in the Obama period, I was kind of, ooh, wait a minute, don't everybody get too excited here. We need to organize ourselves because there's something happening. I actually think that Kamala Harris has come up more in the Biden period as a politician. What I see is the growth in her over the past 4 years is pretty profound. Just as a politician, I think seeing the Democratic Party that Joe Biden has created under him, I think has had influence on her. And I know her pretty well because I'm from California. So I watched her as a California politician for years when she came up, as the Attorney General and then the Senate. And, I actually saw her speak in person for the Senate campaign and stuff. And she's different now. And I think that growth, and maybe I'm making the wrong assumption here, I think she is making some practical decisions in the face of Donald Trump to take certain things off the table in this very truncated campaign that could cause some trouble in a very close election. She's trying to sort of say, look, and I'm not saying that she's lying necessarily, because I think, especially if I think about something like fracking, it seems like that's kind of changed in the Democratic Party. I haven't heard much about it anyway, and maybe there's a new consensus that I'm unaware of. But as far as her progressive, bona fides, I think that she has become more progressive, but has become a more savvy politician about how to sell progressive policies. That's my guess. And I don't think any of us should take it for granted, because it could go the opposite. She could get in there and be like Obama and say, hey, let's work with the Republicans, or,
Right.
decide that there's some, that she's going to do. Like, his thing was, I'm so popular that I can do a grand bargain and everybody will come out win-win, which we all knew was BS, right? I mean, we were going, no, have you met the Republicans? That's not going to happen. Maybe she thinks she can do that. I'm not getting that sense, but it's possible, and we're going to have to keep a very close eye on it. But I do think that she will give an ear to progressive policies and to progressive politics in a way that probably Obama wouldn't. And I think that's because she saw what Joe Biden was able to accomplish during those 4 years. That's my guess. Maybe I'm being too Pollyanna-ish, but I'm hoping that that's how it goes, and we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. In the meantime, I think that like, and I don't know that there's been other things I've ever really felt can be this effective with so little, but this fight over Lena Khan,
Yep.
I think is much bigger than it appears.
Mm-hmm.
At least in terms of like where the direction of politics, like in another 3 or 4 years of Lena Khan at the FTC,
Absolutely.
and it will change the behavior of businesses.
I think
to the
Gary
point-
Gensler too. I think those are the kinds of things
100%.
that are just super. Keep your eyes on those
8
things.
years of a
Yep.
specific trajectory has such broad implications.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I just remember 8 years of George Bush. Like, it
Yep.
took until the end of the Obama administration before like things were even like remotely close
Yep.
to back to where they were, but they weren't even. And so you can really change the trajectory for 30, 40 years with
Mhm.
an 8-year sort of administration here. And simultaneously, the way that administrations, particularly new administrations, make these determinations is we only have X amount of resources
Mhm.
in terms of time, in terms of energy, in terms of political capital and whatnot.
Mhm.
Where are we going to expend the effort
Yes.
and
Yes.
where are we not?
Yeah.
And so much of this becomes, how much of a headache would it be to fire Lena Khan?
Yeah.
Like, what would you get after you've been elected, right? Like, it's one thing to like go, to Reid
Yeah.
Hoffman, like, hey, I'm not going to say anything. But after you've been elected,
Right.
where all of a sudden, raising that money in this
Mhm.
cycle, not necessarily as important. What's more important is like, you're not expending the political capital you have
Yep.
as a nascent administration on something. And
Mhm.
so from my perspective, like locking in the gains we've made with Joe Biden is absolutely essential. And the more that people
Absolutely.
like, I really think like if Josh Shapiro is not the VP pick, it will be because there were people on Twitter and Facebook and polling
No
saying,
doubt about it. No doubt
you're
about
going to
it.
create a problem for yourself
No
to
doubt.
pick this guy.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, it's much easier to say,
Mhm.
this is radioactive as opposed to this is something you should do. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you may not get Walls, but you can sort of say like picking Shapiro is just going to be a headache. It's going to be a
Yeah.
headache. So whatever
Is
benefit you
it
think you're going to
worth
get.
it to you?
Yeah,
Is it worth
exactly.
it to you to pick this fight? And I don't, we're no longer in the era of the sister soldiering or seeing the advantage of picking fights with the left. I really think that era is gone. I mean, I look at a politician like AOC, who I truly revere. I mean, I have to say, even with the whole thing that happened with Joe Biden, there was a lot of, dissension, in the coalition over her stance and the other members of the squad on that. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it made perfect sense for her to be one saying, look,
I
we're
agree.
standing behind the president. We're just going to do this thing. Let somebody else, let Nancy Pelosi take the heat on that. Let
Yeah.
her be the one to be doing that stuff. Don't go trying to push out Joe Biden. But that's because, I mean, these people are smart, Sam. They are so smart and they're politically savvy. It's just as you put it, and I hadn't really thought of it in these terms. It's a new generation, and they've also come up in a different period of politics. And by the way, I mean, I'm old, and you're getting old, but we've
I'm
been
old.
around. We've been around for a long time, but we've been doing this for a while. And this stuff that we've been doing when the internet came along and we started doing our thing was pushing the party towards this. And finally, we have new politicians out there who came of political age during the period where people were saying, we're not. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the McGovern race. I mean, I was still a kid, but I remember it. And we're not subject to that. That's not who we were. And now I think this new generation doesn't even know what that is. So this is good news. And I kind of think Harris, she's going to be 60 when she's inaugurated if she wins. That's just about the right age for this particular generational transition. She's Gen X. God knows Gen X has been waiting in the wings long enough.
Sure have.
It's time. It is time.
Heather Parton, Digby, always a pleasure. We'll, of course, link to all your pieces at Salon and at Hullabaloo. Thanks so much. And we'll see you soon. It's going to be...
it could be fun.
Hopefully it turns out well, but it's definitely going to be funner than it would have been.
Yes, whatever it is.
Without a doubt. Thank you, Heather. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Talk to you later.
We are back, and we are joined by my dear friend, Francesca Fiorentini. Hello to you.
Hello, Emma.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's been a bit of a long week, but you have a longer month because you've actually got a gig. Congratulations in Chicago. You want to plug that right off the rip?
She booked a gig, ladies and gentlemen. She booked a gig so hard that she had to add a second show. Yeah, thank you. We're going to be in Chicago for the DNC. Don't actually have access to the DNC, but I have access to Chicago, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to see me and Matt Lieb do stand-up, August 20th, that's a Tuesday. We've got a late show, 9 p.m. Yes, I said 9 on a Tuesday. So come out, Chicago. It'll be super fun. Also, Monday, the 19th, we're doing live Bitchuation Room / Bad Hasbara. So that's also the 19th. There's still tickets available for that show. But yeah, come out. It'll be super fun. Again, I think we'll be a few drinks deep. We're going to have other guest comedians, but it's mostly like a double co-headlining event with Matt and I. No baby. So, it'll be a party.
So you're just leaving the baby in the well.
You can't have the baby do like 5 minutes to like open?
Just a hot 5. Oh, yeah. No, we would if she wouldn't like crush it up top and kind of upstage us.
Totally upstage, right.
Because you never know. If your set's not going, we're like, bring back the baby.
Yeah, right. And then you'd have to eat your young, just so that they aren't a threat to you. I think that's kind of the natural progression of this.
That's actually my biggest hesitation around having a kid was not climate change or, like finances. But like, I can't be upstaged, like I just don't want to be upstaged by something so small and screamy. But I'm getting used to it. Yeah. Okay. I do have some guns, right? Just small little mini guns.
Right there.
Right. Just in case things get wild in the third bedroom of my house.
So you're holstering them with bra straps, which are, honestly more badass than holsters because people don't realize they dig into your shoulder with the little knob or whatever the thing is. It's not a knob.
Coming soon to the merch store is bras with holsters on them.
Oh, wow. Holstering
bras.
Four different things. One boob, another boob, and on each side a little pistol. That's how I leave the house every single day.
I mean, it really is just
pistol on flanking the boobs.
We are very close to a MAGA candidate coming out with a straight Austin Powers like gun bra, like that right? Like
yes. You know what?
Very close.
I was thinking about Austin Powers the other day, oddly, because I feel like Heather Graham doesn't get enough cultural cachet. Like Heather Graham should have what Jennifer, like a period where Jennifer Coolidge is having right now, where everyone realizes like, oh, this person was really funny and a part of our you don't agree with this?
I mean, Jennifer Coolidge is on a level that like,
I know she's an actual like comedian. I get it, but Heather Graham was a part of so many funny comedies, and I feel like she never gets the credit.
Austin Powers was definitely not one of those. I will say Bowfinger was.
Look, you're a real comedian, but
I mean, that'll be for everyone in Chicago to decide. No, and I think that's a mark like in my favor.
Probably.
I mean, I did when I was like 12, 11. I guess.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Duh.
I mean, here's the thing. I also
the shadows
like
in the tent when he's picking stuff out of his butt. That's hilarious.
Yes.
It's a great
okay,
comedy
but
writing.
you guys are too young. Maybe you're too young, but Ace Ventura still slaps. Fight
I
me.
agree.
You know what I'm saying? Ace Ventura still slaps. Right. Dumb and Dumber
Besides
still
the
slaps.
transphobia.
Oh, of course. Yes. The reveal, which is the kid, you're like, why?
Yeah, I don't know what was happening.
I know. I hated the climax of Ace Ventura.
I'm like, Wikipedia didn't exist, but I'm like looking for Wikipedia to understand what happened at the end.
yeah, right.
Yeah. But also, it's very funny because like right wingers, just like as comedic, I don't know, connoisseurs, if you can even call them that. That's like their level. It's like, why can't there be more like nuts in underwear? You know, like that. That's what they think is funny. Like they've never gone beyond being like an 11-year-old.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and some of us can go back to that place with Austin Powers, but some of us are stuck as an 11-year-old, right? In
it's
that
true.
comedic ecosystem. Speaking of people's genitalia, I wanted to get your opinions, or at least on reproductive rights, on JD Vance here. The Kamala Harris campaign has been pretty phenomenal in just rolling out the creepiest JD Vance clips every 12 hours.
Not hard to find. I love it.
No,
Yeah.
it's readily available. Stuff that should have been in the Trump campaign's like research process.
Yeah, he had Don Jr. on top of that.
And Don Jr. I wouldn't be shocked if he missed some details, honestly, at this point, and where his brain is at on a regular
But was
basis.
Don on the job? Was he supposed to vet?
He was
He's
supposedly.
like, I got this. I'm gonna be up all night. No, trust me. I know every
totally
single
vetted.
podcast.
I put in the hours.
Legit.
Like Elon Musk, I work 23 hours a day. Okay, so you're on stimulants for like 20 hours of the day.
Yep.
Thank you for clearing that up. But anyway, so some of what they uncovered was like this JD Vance older interview. This was from Spectrum 1 in Ohio. This was when he was running for Senate, September 2021. And he's asked about rape and incest exemptions for abortion, which we know are non-actionable because the time that it would take to prove such claims would mean that in terms of the exception, the abortion could not happen.
Or who you would have to prove it against, i.e. maybe a family member.
Right.
You being a minor. This is fine. Hopefully you can drive. Get yourself a lawyer. 14-year-old.
Right. And that means that, don't worry, Republicans aren't barbaric, saying 12-year-olds shell out like $10,000 to prove that you were raped by your uncle. I mean, this is the humane position, obviously. Anyway, here's JD Vance and his thoughts on such things.
Fundamental problem with abortion law in this country, which is that it's unsustainable and it's unstable.
I asked Vance if he thought anti-abortion laws should include exceptions for rape or incest.
Look, I think two wrongs don't make a right. At the end of the day, we're talking about an unborn baby. What kind of society do we want to have? A society that looks at unborn babies as inconveniences to be discarded?
Should a woman be forced to carry a child to term after she has been the victim of incest or rape?
Look, my view on this has been very clear, and I think the question betrays a certain presumption that's wrong. It's not whether a woman should be forced to bring a child to term, it's whether a child should be allowed to live, even though the circumstances of that child's birth are somehow inconvenient or a problem to the society. The question really to me is about the baby. We want women to have opportunities, we want women to have choices, but above all, we want women and young boys in the womb to have the right to life. Right now, our society doesn't afford that. I think it's a tragedy, and I think we can do better.
In a follow-up question
All right.
to Vance.
So young boys, that was a really telling moment at the end of at the end of that quote there. Not young girls. I mean, come on. For all of the fear mongering that we hear about China and their one child policy, which natalists like him and Elon Musk often fall into, like they actually subscribe to that level of control of families and of human bodies, right? The boogeyman that they describe is actually who they are. He doesn't see women, or even as girls, as somebody who need to be at the forefront of his political thought about who to protect. Women are purely, and people who can get pregnant, vessels for young boys, and we have to protect that machine at all costs, not the humanity and wishes of said human being birthing
if it's a girl, it's just like a Russian nesting doll of another uterus I want to control. And it's like, and then that girl's got all her eggs, and then those eggies. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Like that's all they see them as. But it's true. Like it's like, oh well, if it's a boy, it's gotta live. Look, I've been pregnant, man. That thing, that zygote, they don't know the difference. They're not alive yet. It doesn't matter. And yeah, this is the whole two wrongs don't make a right is like the grossest, weaponization of that slogan or that phrase. Like you're just allowing for rape, child rape and incest. You're allowing wrongs to make more wrongs, to make more wrongs, to make more wrongs. That's all this is. I mean, I love the weird angle that the Democrats are now going with, but you got to just make it creepy. It is creepy. Weird is way too softball on all this.
And there's also the enormous wrong that he is ignoring that he says should be there to make a right, which is allowing for this person who's been victimized by sexual assault to have to live through a trauma, not just for 9 months while they're carrying and that child is just gestating and it's against their will. But all of the reproductions after, not reproductions, Jesus, what do you call
repercussions?
It? Repercussions, right after, where that young child, or I don't know, it can be any woman, right, has to live with their rapist's baby and a constant reminder of this incredible trauma that they've gone through for the rest of their lives. Like that part isn't even a consideration, the emotional toll on the women. And he doesn't talk about how women will be affected. He talks about how society will be affected. And it's so nebulous what he even describes about what the effect would be.
Yeah, we're deprived of another worker bee who can die on a shop floor for Amazon. Like that's really what it is, as if you're at all taking care of these children once they are born. You don't care. They just voted against the expansion or the continuation of a child tax credit. Republicans just tank that. So what are we really talking about? I think they should meet with like the fifth graders who are now parents. I believe one fifth grader, I can't remember which state it was again a victim of rape and had a baby, named the baby Peanut, that much I remember, and is starting fifth grade. Meet with them. Meet with that girl. Talk to her. If you think every life is precious, go talk to her and her baby Peanut. See how they're doing.
Right. And the reality is that I do believe that there's a certain right-winger and venture capitalists like J.D. Vance are probably in this bucket of people that like there to be some sort of disciplining force in the form of a child that you have to take care of as it relates to the labor force, right? The more people have fewer freedoms to decide how and when they create their families, the less leverage that like capitalist bosses have over them because they have more freedom for themselves to do and choose how they create their families and on what timeline works for them. Like I genuinely think there are Republicans out there that enjoy the control that their vision of a kind of nuclear family imposes on people, not just in terms of the religious nature of it, but in the way that they want to structure society, which is like, you've got to take care of this little person, so you better get to work and shut up if you're being sexually harassed or your wages are being stolen from you. This is what you have to do because the state has mandated it.
I mean, it is a sad reality, but one of the leading causes of poverty among women is motherhood.
Yeah.
It is. Just statistically, it is. And I can tell you, as someone who's bought way too much baby gear, things are tough. Times is rough. Come see me in Chicago, right? Buy my merch.
Exactly.
But no, for real, and so you're absolutely right. And I do think that one of the things, we saw, I think some job growth is slowing, reports out today. And one of the biggest sections of American society that's left the workforce completely are women. Thanks to the pandemic and the fallout from the pandemic, women have absolutely left the workforce in droves. And in part, that is due to a lack of comprehensive childcare, affordable childcare, and also the fact that wages have also been fairly stagnant. So it's not addressed. I do hope that Vice President Harris actually also has. It seems like she's going to consider more of the care economy as part of her plans and sort of lifting up that.
Yes.
Yeah, that part of the Build Back Better plan, which is great. I want to see some of those action items on the table.
I want to see some platform at this point. I'm sure it's going to get unveiled at the DNC, but I'm starting to get a little bit restless. It seems like the fact that she has close ties with the SEIU and that she ran on universal childcare and she was apparently a big promoter behind the scenes of the child tax credit. These are all good signs, but I would like pen to paper please, to make sure that these signs are not just things that are being put out to the press to drum up kind of a progressive enthusiasm for her candidacy, which is very much there. And I do think just based on her record, it's hard to be more conservative than Joe Biden on almost anything. I mean, as a Democrat, he was considered conservative and racist in the time when Obama selected him, when we know that Obama embraced austerity policies and did not have the best domestic economic agenda. He was right-wing even then, and that's part of why he was selected. But he still did some things as president as it relates to antitrust and labor, where if she carries that over and builds on it, we're in a much better situation, but she has to just commit to doing that.
Yeah, and one of the areas I'd like to see her build also is criminal justice reform. And I know that people are probably rolling their eyes. I mean, this is a, former prosecutor, former AG of California, doesn't have the greatest track record, but I actually think some of the things she did in California, like creating a database of when people are shot by cops that we still don't have on a federal level, her signifying, this week she calls the family members of Sonia Massey and says we need to implement the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which again is a very far cry from what I would like, but it at least establishes that database. These are steps that Joe Biden has not taken in 4 years. So I think maybe her history as a prosecutor, absolute ding, but also familiarity with how things do not work in our justice system could be a benefit to her. So I want to see that.
Well, I'd also rather so Keir Starmer is a former human rights attorney, right? And in he's a corporate centrist that has hollowed out the left from Labour in the UK. But even they are signaling we may stop arms to Israel.
I do have to say it looks like there might be slow walking that. So, but
don't get too excited. You're scaring.
I'm not getting too, but respecting the ICC, for example, I think that
it's a start. Yeah,
Harris maybe as a prosecutor, someone who's actually a lawyer. I mean, Biden may have a law degree. I don't know. He's been in politics for 4 million years, but. I do feel like that could be
it's on papyrus.
A better approach.
Chipped in wood.
Go ahead.
No, I just am wondering if he does have a law degree, it's written on papyrus, because he's old. That was the joke.
That was the joke. Okay. I'm sorry. I think about it in the font form. I don't know if I even know. Is papyrus a wood? Is that a real thing?
It's an early form of paper from Egypt. Yeah. Yeah. The media scholars know that, but
okay.
I wonder on this point though. Branko Marcetic had a good piece in Jacobin. Which Kamala Harris are we getting? And I think overall it's more of a condemnation than an exculpation. But I think he does a good job of saying the good things she did. And he writes, the first test of Harris's principles came in 2004 as she was elected as San Francisco's DA. While promising never to impose capital punishment, less than 6 months into her tenure, Harris defied a united chorus of voices from the city's police chief and police rank and file to Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, that lovely person, calling for the death penalty for a 21-year-old who killed an undercover police officer. So, like,
Yes.
She's done plenty, and that article gets into it, to upset people on the criminal justice reform tip. But also, she is not a Republican.
Yes, there's that. And I do think that the party's in a bit of a better place than I think she was probably caught off guard in 2020 when the George Floyd effect. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but when those protests happened, and her like now general election pitch of being a prosecutor that goes after Donald Trump, she couldn't have been picked a worse time to run for president during the 2020 primary.
Absolutely.
By using that particular tactic. It plays so much better in a general election than it would have or should have in a Democratic primary. So it was both like not right for the primary and also not right for that particular primary.
But man, if there is a kryptonite that Trump has, it is black female prosecutors, right? Like Fani Willis, Letitia James, Tanya Chutkin, now Kamala Harris, and he's proving it. And honestly, this week has been the weird race science week as well, right? And when she turned black, and I want everyone listening to know that if I ever go into politics, God forbid, I've always been Chinese. I've always enjoyed black sesame buns. I've suckled on chicken's feet. I have been way too harsh on my own family. I've been Chinese, even though I am also Italian. And I've got a horribly Italian. I know. I try. Every day I wake up and I'm like, maybe today I'll just be Greek. I'm not sure. But race is in the eye of the white supremacists. So whatever Trump says, I am.
Right. Okay. That's a good way to relate to your identity, right? I do like the idea of the fact that this person who has a Jamaican father, who went to a HBCU, which there are non-white people that go there, non-black people that go there, but still was a part of a historically black sorority, has decided, just for apparently political convenience yesterday, to identify as black. Wasn't it just like last week that they were complaining that Biden had decided to appoint a black woman as his vice president, and that was some sort of DEI hire? But now she's not even black. She's not even black, apparently.
She's not black enough.
Made it up.
I'm very excited for this line because Trump is doubling down on it. I hope they keep going with it because they're going to have to keep proving, and you have to be like, well, what is black enough to you? And they'll be like, sneakers. Like, they'll just have to say, like,
right.
They not
Felonies.
Like us. You're felon. Right. So they have to go back to, because look, if she's the nominee, if she does happen to become president, the whole we're going to restrain ourselves on her gender and her race, out the window. They're going real hard on it.
Donald Trump led the way. It was seemingly like Mike Johnson and even Kevin McCarthy, who came out, not that he has any power, but he's speaking for the Republican establishment in that way, saying, no, I don't know if these tactics are very effective going after her race and gender. And Trump just triples down. She's actually Indian. On a photo at his latest rally, he showed a photo, or I guess it was a screenshot of a Business Insider article that said she was the first Indian American senator. And it was like, see? No, it's because she was not the first black American senator.
Yeah.
You moron.
This is kind of like how they, the Obama stuff, where it's like, that conspiracy goes pretty deep, and you kind of got to hand it to them if they planted the birth announcement on the same day. It's like, this baby is going to be president, so let's make sure we fake a birth announcement for him in the Honolulu
That's how
press.
Sleeper cells work. I don't know if you get that. Yeah,
exactly. But this is from when Harris became Attorney General 20 years ago, from the Office of the California official government. Harris is the first woman and the first African American and the first South Asian American to hold the office of the Attorney General in the history of California. Now, for some reason, they don't see the need to dwell on, is that possible? What does that mean? Pick one.
Yeah.
Because that's not, a real concern.
Yes, because it can be all of those things. So did you see this, Francesca, that one of the richest people on the planet, Elon Musk, posted a deepfake ad for Kamala Harris after it was announced that he was donating $45 million a month to the Trump campaign?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to, maybe not going to do it.
After seeing the poll numbers and also not
having the money, wanting to.
This is what happens when you buy. Like, he literally saw Trump try to get assassinated and thought the thumbs up thing and the fight thing was going to win the election.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in a K-hole when I offered 45 million a month. Sorry.
But then the identity of the shooter was just like wrong. So sucks.
Right.
Super
It was like,
sucks.
oh, we can't. Like, also, he may have had a history of anti-Semitic posts and was a registered Republican. Oy, oy, oy.
AR-15, we love that gun. Yeah.
So he's backtracked off that $45 million a month pledge, which even before Biden dropped out, even before the shooting, I was like, there's probably a good chance that he rescinds on this because he's a known liar.
If I'm one of his like Saudi or big bank financiers, I'm kind of thinking like, hey, if you got all that money to slosh around, maybe you
want to
make some repayments. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he clearly, after buying like the biggest journalistic media communications platform and making it so that like white supremacists could come back on the platform again, he put out an ad that is just like a deep fake ad about Kamala Harris. He tweeted this out. This should be illegal, by the way.
I, Kamala Harris, and your Democrat candidate for president, because Joe Biden finally exposed his senility of the debate. Thanks, Joe. I was selected because I am the ultimate diversity hire. I'm both a woman and a person of color. So if you criticize anything I say, you're both sexist and racist. I may not know the first thing about running the country, but remember, that's a good thing if you're a deep state puppet. I had 4 years under the tutelage of the ultimate deep state puppet, a wonderful mentor, Joe Biden. Joe taught me rule number 1, carefully hide your total incompetence. I take insignificant things and I discuss them as if they're significant. And I believe that exploring the significance of the insignificant is in itself significant. Talking about the significance of the passage of time. Right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time, and there is such great significance to the passage of time. Another trick is trying to sound black. I pretend to celebrate Kwanzaa, and in my speeches, I always do my best Barack Obama impression. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. And okay, look, maybe my work addressing the root causes of the border crisis were catastrophic, but my knowledge of international politics is truly shocking. The United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. It is an alliance that is strong and enduring. And just remember, when voting this November, it is...
We get it. We get this garbage. My favorite part is like, if you criticize me, you're racist and sexist. Okay, so what are the actual criticisms of her? Like, they'll just call you racist and sexist. That's what it says in the ad there. Then actually level a criticism. Because all they've been able to do is she's lying about being black. She's lying about her heritage. She's a DEI candidate. These are all racially connected smears or attacks on her. Then if you're saying, like, we can't say anything at all, we're just going to get criticized for being racist or sexist, then say the thing first and then we can judge from there. But they haven't landed on anything, because even the stuff that we have issues with like the tough on crime prosecutorial stuff, they agree with.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am waiting for sort of like a Willie Horton moment where we get, I mean, they do a bad faith, we believe in real criminal justice reform angle. Like, they find someone who was locked up for truancy in California. They bring him out. If it had been before the RNC, maybe that could have happened. They could have wheeled that person out of the RNC, but not having that platform, I think, changes it. Still, I'm waiting for like the ad where Trump speaks to someone who, you know, was affected by Kamala Harris's like objectively bad policies and uses it to hit her from almost the left. We'll see. I don't know if we're going to get that, but I think that'd be my strategy. But also they could just keep saying DEI and have everybody turn against her, because ultimately, and I think you guys have been right about this, people don't like racism. They don't
Yeah.
like being bigoted and hateful, and it's just gross.
Or
them.
even if they are,
secretly,
even
right,
if they are,
like,
they don't
secretly
want
are.
to be like, I'm the person voting for somebody who's clearly racist, right?
Or the only reason I'm voting against her is because she's a black woman. That's a tough pill to swallow if you're a Republican. You need something else to go on. Maybe the border thing is good, but like they don't have much to point to. The quote that we all hate, do not come, right? They would never use that because they love that. The idea that you would go to Central America and tell people not to come across the border.
Well, she's also, what is going to happen, and I'm just telling people now, she's already started running to the right/center on immigration because that's perceived as her biggest polling weakness, as you describe. But I'm telling you now, and if, hopefully she learns this if she gets elected, because she's just seemingly, she kept over the Biden campaign staff. I think a lot of the strategies that Biden was using are being deployed here. But just running to the right on immigration without giving an alternative narrative is not going to go well for Democrats. It's going to hurt them. It actually just reinforces the issue and reinforces the bad framing that Republicans engage in. So, like,
Julian Castro for Veep. Anyone?
Yeah.
No, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. They have to go with
POC.
the whitest person on the planet, most likely. But like, I really do feel like this kind of conventional wisdom on this front is just really bad for the Democrats long term, because the longer that they embrace this false notion. I mean, the arrests at the border were the lowest, I think, in Biden's presidency last month.
Yeah, thanks to the terrible app that they rolled out.
Totally. But even then, it's just like, okay, she's going to say, Trump and the Republicans killed the bipartisan border bill that was so draconian and right-wing. She can use that on the campaign trail. I don't really have a problem with that, even though she is committing to trying to pass it if she gets elected. I disagree with that entirely, but I understand the practical realities here. You can talk about saying you want to get tough on the border because you want to get elected, fine. But then at the very least, have a yes and where you talk about pathways to citizenship, where you talk about improving processing, where you talk about how like there are millions of people who want to come here legally and that's actually healthy for the country. And here's the way that you can do that. But she didn't do any of that so far. So
I think
I'm trying to be patient because the platform will come out at the DNC, I think, most likely. But I have pessimism about this particular issue, even though I have optimism about others, that she'll update herself from Biden based on the polling.
I mean, yeah, the two areas we need her to break from Biden on are immigration and foreign policy. And when it comes to immigration, that foreign policy is so interlinked, and you see this week, like, again, the U.S. casting doubt on the Venezuelan elections. And I'm not saying everything was above board, but the main thing is you need to stop sanctioning this country. If you actually want to prevent immigration from Venezuela, which again is one of the biggest countries of migration into the U.S., stop the sanctions. They do not help anyone. And they only give further fodder for a Maduro administration, if you hate them, to just blame you for all their problems. So, yeah, I mean, I get worried when I think about, again, this week, potential descent into World War III and handing over an entire, apparatus from Biden to Kamala Harris, should she beat Trump, that entrenches more war and entrenches a terrible immigration policy. So we have to keep pushing.
Absolutely. But it is interesting to see the richest man on the planet putting this out there. Like,
long wind up. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we got into our own kind of discussion here, but holy crap, this should not be legal. Like, and this was the reason he purchased this platform, was to spread disinformation and then pretend that it was about free speech.
And have a very public midlife crisis.
So public.
Also his trans daughter. Or
trans daughter.
Child.
Right.
Love Vivian. Oh my God. Big fan over here. Like,
big fan.
We didn't even talk about that. Grimes, there's a whole falling out. There's trouble in paradise. Well, I mean, it hasn't been paradise for a while, but Grimes and Elon don't follow each other because Grimes came out in support of Vivian, Elon's trans child, saying, I love Vivian, after Elon insanely. And like, I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine saying that about any person I parented, that they're dead to me.
Yeah.
But why they are dead?
Because they are trans.
Matt. because because the woke mind virus nom-nommed them. Just
of course, we forgot about that. Right.
Yeah, it's
a bad dad.
He is
a terrible
the
dad.
bad dads. That's what they should run on, like Elon, Trump, like
Divorced bad dads.
That's why they tried to the RNC. Like, look at all these people that are related to Trump that love him.
Yeah, JD Vance. When's he going to get divorced? Like 3 years from now?
I mean, I think Usha's self-hatred knows no bottom. I think we might be dealing with another Melania here. I mean,
she clerked for Brett Kavanaugh and John Roberts after being a registered Democrat until the year they got married in 2014, and then she started clerking for them. Like, it almost, I know that sounds like Pollyannish or naive, but I still can't believe that there are people who are educated in that manner, but whose beliefs are so easily turned on a dime when they see dollar signs in front of them.
Yep. Yeah, look, if I were Harris, I definitely would speak. I would defend Usha, even though she doesn't deserve defense. But I just think it would be really funny, one South Asian woman in the public eye to another being like, girl, blink twice, or something. Like, we have a program for you to get out of here. But yeah, we won't see that.
Francesca, where can people find your work? The Bitchuation Room.
Hey,
stand up, all that.
Thank you so much for having me. Franny Fio on all the things. YouTube.com/Franny Fio is the Bitchuation Room. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And I'll be live in Chicago for the DNC. It's going to be wild. The Bitchuation Room will be live with Bad Hasbara, Matt Lieb's podcast. That's Monday, August 19th. And John Idarola will be a guest on that from The Damage Report. And then a lot of other...
him.
Yeah. I mean, look.
What an asshole. I mean, truly, like, when you think of toxic white male, it's hard for me to think of anybody more of a
fragile
toxic presence.
Absolutely. It's that board game vibes, just so misogynist.
Why does he have so many? He's got so many board games.
Man spreading all over his house. Yeah.
I mean, it's the equivalent, right, of like collecting ladies' panties. That's how problematic it is, all those board games.
Okay, I feel like I need to stand in for John. That's good.
We're being facetious. We love John.
Facetious. That's
John is like the antidote to all toxic masculinity.
That's exactly right. Right. He is the least toxic male. That's why it's funny to call him a toxic male.
Do you play board games, Matt? I'm hearing board game defense.
I'm not a board game player. No, I think that's weird.
No, but he's just defending other
John, because I feel bad for him saying it's like he collects panties.
No, he's not the IDF. He doesn't collect women's panties like that.
No. But I want, but part of me is I want him to see this, and then I want him to text me so we can catch up.
We're all gonna catch up, and you guys are gonna be there, right?
No, we're not gonna be in Chicago. No. Who's gonna run the show? We have 4 people that work here.
Well, you just set up in a little Airbnb or something with bad Wi-Fi.
I mean, like, gotta be honest, we barely have the money to freaking fix the air conditioner.
I'm sweting right now.
Yeah, it's so hot in here.
Oh, God. That's why Sam took off. He was like, nope, can't do another day. Yes, everyone come out. There should be a link in the description. And thank you guys so much. Love you, missed you. Happy that Joe Biden is no longer a hostage.
Yes.
He was being held hostage by everyone in his administration. Kind of ironic that the only hostage Biden was able to free in 10 months was himself. But anyway, take good care, guys.
Appreciate you. Bye, Francesca. All right, guys, with that, we're going to wrap up. We'll do a really, really abbreviated fun half. No time for calls today. I mean, look, we brought you Francesca. We brought you Digby. So much fun. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Oh, yeah. David and I are going to do a catch-up. He wasn't there on Tuesday, so we'll probably get his thoughts on Venezuela and some other topical stuff. And we're going to be talking to Elias Cepeda about this boxing trans, not even trans, like it's a woman.
It's a woman, or it's a cis woman, right? Yes.
Right. Like, I mean, I wonder.
We'll talk about this in the fun half to
Jesus,
clarify
insane.
for people. Yeah.
But I mean, long story short, Natalia in person was being dramatic. But patreon.com/left reckoning to get access to that. And yeah, check that out.
All right, guys, no time for calls, but we'll head into the fun half and we will read your IMs. See you there.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
Yeah, I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. So was offered a tour, sushi, and
that's what we call it in the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. We shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi. I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind. So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
Had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's
the tour.
a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour.
That's a real thing. That's
poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion. Real thing.
That's poker with the boys. That offered a tour.
That's a real thing. That's
poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour. Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, buddy.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Tour,
deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has like the weight of the world on his shoulders. Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the majority report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks doing great.
Now, shut up. I don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best. Violet.
Tour.
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't bitch. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
sorry,
she wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back, folks. It is the fun half, a very abbreviated one. We will read some IMs. Sundown Cedar, based purely on skin tone, it'd probably be better be Bashir. He's the pastiest of them all, I believe. That's probably accurate. Recast Hugo says, I know it's not entirely on topic, but as a native listener, I am curious about your takes on on native land reparations. And land justice. I know you have said that two-state is segregation, so I got to thinking about how you view land reparations. Since it goes hand in hand with tribal sovereignty, you've been talking about the legal fracturing of the USA and providing the tribes with jurisdictions to get where most of us want to be in terms of justice. So how do you guys imagine something looking like that in the USA? How do you think it would have to look versus the ideal image?
Yeah, I think we should, and it's a guard against anti-Semitism to think about these things in our own history.
Yes.
And absolutely, I mean, land back and tribal sovereignty is something that I think should be a priority for the next century. The difficulty is just the extent to which genocide has been conducted, which is 90% of many tribes, and not just because of things like warfare and stuff, but also germs, and not just like germ warfare, but just like germs in general, just decimating tribes. Like I said, like, and not decimating is 10% lost. Like, it left like 10% of some tribes existent, and people weren't able to care. So like, how do you actually repair that? It can't fully be done. So ultimately, I think a system, like, I think reparations is and I think the best way to do it is through things like we've talked about with David Trier, I think, about like national parks should be absolutely under tribal jurisdiction.
Yep.
America's rural areas are becoming less and less populated. That land shouldn't be gobbled up by Bill Gates. It should be gobbled up by these tribes. And so like I think like the difficulty is just, you know, the numbers. There right now, if you did one state in Palestine, Palestinians would have the demographic majority.
Yes.
You don't have that here if
Right.
you decided to, you know, franchise people in the exact same way, right? Because of just the amount of killing that has happened here. And we do not, and part of our support for Israel is holding us back from appreciating the extent to which we're living on a giant graveyard.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think many Americans have reckoned with that very fact. But I do think it's instructive, as Matt says, if we're going to look at modern colonialism or neo-colonialism or however you want to refer to it, if we want to have a broader, smarter conversation about it where people have some collective consciousness, I think that's necessary. You want me to keep reading IMs? Yeah. All right. Matt's going to take a break for 1 second. I'm going to read some IMs, then we'll get to some clips. Uncommitted Voider, call from 818 about Shapiro and foreign policy issues that could sink Harris's campaign. Apologies, we're not taking calls today. We really only have like 25, 30 minutes in the fun half. Dave from Jamaica, it's so odd conservatives focusing on this angle. Her dad is a Marxist and they have not touched that. I know, they'll get to that eventually, but it is interesting because they tried to attack Obama about his dad. I mean, I think that it worked to a certain extent, but for already the people that were supporting Republicans, just racists. She and her father, I don't think really have a close relationship at this point, which is sad, because I know her mother passed away. But there's very little, I think, to glean from that. And at the very least, they haven't seemingly landed on it yet. Just Kofefe said either Emma or Matt's levels are low and other sources are hot. Fran was very loud. Okay, apologies for that, guys. Sam Cedar Simp. Didn't J.K. Rowling sue someone for libel over a tweet? She needs to be sued for everything that she has. And she has a lot.
Yeah.
Tacoma Joe says, wow, have you guys read Tim Walz's wiki? Very humble beginnings. Served in the National Guard for 24 years, which included postings from Texas to the Arctic Circle. Trained in heavy artillery as a geography teacher. He learned his high school to its first football state championship, led it. He was the faculty advisor for the school's first Gay Straight Alliance in 1999. There are so many positive moments in his past that Middle America can eat up. Totally agree. It's probably not going to be Walls, though.
Did you have the Gay Straight Alliance when you were in school?
I did, yes. But I was in an all-girls school, so it was a little bit
different. Right. Yeah. I'm just curious if that's still around, because that was like my first. We had a Gay Straight Alliance band in high school, and then also Minnesota State University had, I think, that was the first time I heard of like a safe space or something like that. And guess what? It was good.
speaking of this trans story here, as it relates, well, it's not even a trans person, but the Olympics are making headlines because, oh my God, the right wing is insane. And there was a boxer, or is a boxer, she advanced, who her name is, I'm sorry.
Amani Khalif.
Amani Khalif. She is from Algeria, and she defeated this Italian boxer, Angela Carini, who had a viral reaction where she cried a lot and FaceTimed her father, but she actually ended up apologizing just like an hour or so ago. So kudos to her, because I think she didn't probably realize the firestorm that this would set off.
It's unclear to me about that, because
I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt because she did apologize.
fair enough. She has a history of, it looks like, taking dives. In 2022, she like also fell in front of an opponent, which seemed, and also like I will just say the dad who she got on FaceTime and said like, I wanted to win this, but the person unfairly was put against me. Her dad is a police officer.
In Italy?
Yeah, in Italy. So just a little background, but yeah, the right wing absolutely caught onto it. In part, I think if you had the exact same, say, chromosomal issue, because just to let people know on the info, born a woman, female genitalia, XY chromosomes.
Which happens.
And I wonder, which they would know if they weren't so, what is a woman? You don't know what a woman is. Well, maybe you should do a little bit of research into some of these, say, middle cases. And yeah, like, so again, female genitalia, always just a woman, but XY chromosomes. And the idea that people like, you're looking at a doctor. What are the mammograms?
Right.
Not mammograms.
No, mammograms for your breasts.
What's the one for
ultrasound?
Ultrasound, saying like we're going to do gender reveal. Well, maybe we'll wait till the testosterone test or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
ridiculous. I mean, they are always like railing about how if you have a penis, you can't be a woman. Well, okay, this person has a vagina.
Doesn't have a penis.
Doesn't have a penis. Has a vagina. Has a uterus. But has a bit different hormonally and chromosomally, a little bit different than other cis women.
Which even that, I have to say, our source for that is like the Russian Olympic
we don't
committee.
know.
We don't know because
which is why we shouldn't be policing this.
Exactly.
This is
There's
insane.
a massive privacy assault in addition to other things.
But the point is just that if you identify as a woman, you get to participate in female sports. You do. You just do. That's the reality that we live in. And especially as trans care gets more and more disseminated and kids are able to use puberty blockers and other hormone replacement as they're younger, this is a non-issue. What's between your legs is a non-issue. But it's actually not even what's between this boxer's legs. It's her specific chromosomal and hormonal makeup, which, I didn't realize that when gender or sex is assigned at birth, that they do blood tests on the infant just to determine, specifically, what hormonal levels are we seeing here? Because
yeah, what is a woman? Well, let's do the blood work.
No, like other cis women, she was assigned female at birth because her genitalia matched it. But no, that's not enough for the freaks on the right. I mean, trigger warning here. This is a horrible word that's used, a slur.
Genuinely hate speech incoming here.
Incoming. But just wanted to play this because this is the right wing. What's this woman's name? Valentina? She's running in... Here we go. Yeah, Valentina Gomez. She is running in Missouri. And she was already the Secretary of State in Missouri.
She's running her election as I believe next week.
Okay, so this person has been elected to office. Here she goes talking about this woman in the Olympics.
These faggots should get their own faggot category because before, if a man hit a woman, it used to land him in jail. Now, it gets you a gold medal at the Olympics. These are the worst Olympics in history. They have made a mockery out of Christianity and women. And let me remind you, there's no such thing as a chick with a dick. Keep women's sports female.
Okay. So, lovely.
Amani Khalif does not have, I repeat, a dick, as Valentina Gomez says there.
Well, let's ask J.K. Rowling. Let's see what she has to say about this. I'm sure this is going to be entirely measured. This is somebody who has decided that as a billionaire, after writing a franchise, and those were being made into movies with spin-offs, and then, you know, there's going to be an HBO show involved here, that her life is better served, not just like sitting on her pile of money, but attacking women and trans women throughout the country and throughout the world. She says, could any picture sum up our new men's rights movement better? The smirk of a male who knows he's protected by a misogynist sporting establishment, enjoying the distress of a woman he's just punched in the head and whose life ambitions he just shattered. First of all, okay, cry more, lady. She fell.
People don't know sport. They don't care
know
about sports. They don't actually want women participating in competitions.
Are you telling me that the woman who thought of the game Quidditch doesn't understand sports? You know, where like the entire game just ends if you catch one ball and then everybody else is kind of meaningless? The snitch, I mean...
Hasn't translated to video games.
No, and also just doesn't translate to real... Like, okay, I mean, I guess in football, the quarterback is the most important position, but it's not so important that, like, the quarterback could do one thing and end the entire game just easily. Whatever. I just find the rules for Quidditch to be bizarre. But long story short, that is not a man. It's not even a trans man or a trans woman. It is a woman who she just decides to misgender the entire time because it fits her specific deranged agenda, and because so much of this anti-trans panic is focused on like the protection of a specific kind of white lady in their vision of who needs protection and who is unworthy of protection. And often that falls along racial lines.
If this was a Swedish boxer versus an Italian boxer, we would not be hearing about this.
Yes,
I don't think
we would not be. Exactly. But I mean, look, the problem with all of this is that Kamala Harris has yet to weigh in. Jesse Waters is very upset about this. Where has Kamala Harris been on the issue of our time? The Algerian boxer defeating the Italian boxer in the Olympics. This is what everybody needs to hear. How can we move on as a society until we hear from the presumptive Democratic nominee about what her thoughts are on this? Here he was last night bitching about this again. And again, this is not, sorry, we're a little shorthanded today. Here we go. Yeah.
You have a female nominee for president of the United States, of the free world, and this is one of the biggest gender controversies of the year in the Olympics. And Kamala Harris hasn't said anything, and she hasn't even been asked about it. And that's a cover-up. And that's a real shame. Crickets. You have a female nominee for president of the United States, of the free world.
She hasn't weighed in. How disqualifying.
It's actually disqualifying that J.D. Vance, who didn't learn the lesson from 2020 when he decided to say Simone Biles is weak for, the yips or whatever she had, also was quick to weigh in on this, saying it was just a man punching a woman, when, of course, that's not the case. It is not a man. Unless they have some, I mean, it's insane how they don't understand also, we need to emphasize the allegation regarding the chromosomal difference, which even if true, I think is understandable, because there are whether, let's say she has a testosterone advantage, right? Like, where do you actually put the cutoff there?
Right.
We have seen this happen a number of times where women, even without that, the XY chromosomes, have had higher testosterone and have been disqualified. Guess what color their skin is often,
exactly,
right? Like this is ridiculous. And all of a sudden, what is a woman isn't just like, well, is it a P or a V? It's, well, let's check those testosterone numbers.
Well, let's return to the Michelle Obama is a man stuff from the Obama administration, right? Like, you just see how these things are intersectional, and how, whether black people or non-white people in general are portrayed as more menacing, stronger. Black men, it's the same thing. Black women, they're just men, and you should be scared of them regardless because they're so much stronger and they're secretly hiding something from you. And she's from Algeria, this boxer, but still.
And also has lost to women before.
Yeah, and they specifically fixate too, I think, on combat sports like boxing because it evokes that like protectionist kind of old racist trope we've seen in the United States as it relates to things like, with Emmett Till or with other lynchings where black people were targeted or non-white people have been targeted in this country, or let's be real, October 7th, and the rape propaganda that came out about that in order to justify the genocide. Colonialism and white supremacy is built upon the bones of black people, of non-white people, of indigenous people, and some of those folks have been accused of sexual crimes against white people and were killed for it because people just wanted to kill the non-white people. This is a trope that is as old as time. So I know that may seem obscure and disconnected from this instance of transphobia directed towards a person who is not trans in the Olympics, but it still is connected because all of these things are in our cultural Western memory.
Accusing people who aren't actually trans of being trans is going to be the main upshot of all of this shit. Like the so-called policing the hypothetical person who is faking something to get it. That is a fantasy. That is a hysterical, ludicrous phantom of a right-wing fascist imagination. What is going to happen is women who excel at these sports, who like maybe they have some kind of lactic acid advantage or something like that, all of a sudden people are going to start scratching their chin being like, can we figure out how to exclude this person using blood work?
Yeah.
Because it's not fair given what we perceive womanhood to be.
Well, Yao Ming was 7'6". 7'6".
Michael Phelps doesn't produce lactic acid like normal people.
Yes. Was he disqualified from swimming, or is he heralded as one of the greatest athletes of all time?
Taylor Horton Tucker is 6 foot. He's 2 inches taller than me. His wingspan is 7 feet 2 inches.
Yes. And notice how none of these freaks talk about regulating professional sports in that way because of the unfair advantages that these athletes have. It's always about women's sports, which they never cared about before this. They still don't. They mock it. And the only reason they care is when they get to like side in their view of a race war that Caitlin Clark did not ask for, by the way. But when they get to cheer on Caitlin Clark getting like a bit of rookie hazing treatment in the WNBA, They only care about policing femininity because for them,
exactly,
femininity is what is defined as what they're into or what they're attracted to. And they are terrified of the idea that they may get a boner when they look at a trans woman.
They care, yeah, exactly. And their concern here is that too hard of a punch was thrown in women's boxing.
Yes.
So thanks for loving women's sports, guys.
I'm worried that Kamala Harris hasn't weighed in on this. Can she lead the country? Can she lead the country without weighing in on the Algerian boxer controversy? I'm not exactly sure. All right, folks, we have a ton of IMs, and we are nearly at 2:30, so we're just going to read some IMs, and then we will get out of here. Freighter 12, are the TERFs about to discover the difference between binary and bimodal, or will they start throwing cis women under the bus to keep their fight relevant? I wonder. Also, Quidditch makes perfect sense as a game for the chosen one to dominate, but that's probably a whole different conversation. That's exactly right.
I think it's more likely that like they will turn to violence rather than turn to accepting that, oh, actually it's not binary, but bimodal.
Right. Brandon Artikoff, every heinous J.K. Rowling quote should be attributed to Robert Galbraith, the pseudonym and male identity she had the privilege to assume in order to sell books, even as she is allowed to adjudicate who is a woman and debate the gender and sex of vulnerable people. This is when abject hypocrisy is absolutely relevant. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, look, she's a female author, and she decided to make her protagonist a male Jesus-type figure in the Harry Potter books. Was she playing with her gender in those instances? I mean, we'll never know.
So, you know.
What?
I was going to say something, but I'm...
Okay, tell me later.
Yeah.
Tushmaster Zero said, the underlying argument in all the anti-trans vitriol is that women are biologically inferior to men, which is sexist and simply not true. People who espouse anti-trans views are misogynists, and none of them could ever compete against women in sports or any other endeavor. Margot from Mass, spot on about transphobia being deeply rooted in anti-black hatred. BJ Arne from Denmark says, as a massive Potterhead, the female misogynist Rowling makes my life miserable. But as she does not understand her own work, I choose to read the words as... and I think you got cut off there.
Art
but
can escape
yeah.
the artist, in my opinion.
Yes. Dark Soul, always interesting to see whenever trans athletes come up. No one ever seems to consider the massive downside athletically of dropping your T levels that it has for a trans women's performance, almost like some sort of experience that can't really be put into hard binaries for people.
And again, we don't actually know that that's the case with Imani Khalif.
Yeah.
People, the sourcing on this apparently is to like the Russians who they had a boxer lose to her, and that was the first time any of this stuff started coming up, which makes me think it was a little bit maybe premeditated, or at least that was in the mind of Karini when it happened.
Yes, that's a good point. I shouldn't have given her credit for apologizing then. I think that's probably true.
It's worth noting she apologized, and also Mussolini's like granddaughter's like, "Hey, women can be strong."
Oh, really?
Like,
well,
we don't give up.
Georgia Maloney is very strong over there in Italy.
The continental fascists aren't with our American right wing on this.
Colleen from Connecticut, Digby's really wish casting. I hope she's right. Fran, on Wednesday night, you should have that schmuck out of the studio and tell him to go back to the kitchen and get you your sebede. Much love all. I didn't hear what Digby said, so I can't comment on that. The Amazing Grando said, I can't believe crime has gotten so bad in NYC that Emma has to get into a John Woo style shootouts as a part of her daily commute now. MR should patent the braletta holster system, though. Yeah, I mean, crime's out of control. Born Blue. New York Times reported yesterday that Shapiro canceled his appearance in weekend events in the Harris campaign. I also read that both Walz and Bashir are scheduled to host separate fundraisers Monday night. Campaign says they'll choose the VP candidate by Tuesday. I don't know how to interpret possible meaning for these moving parts. Care to read the tea leaves? I saw people saying that he was canceling his fundraisers in the Hamptons, and that was a sign that he was going to be the VP. I don't know about that.
We'll know when we know.
Well, no, I can't deal with the speculation anymore. It's painful. It's painful. I think that she would be making a huge mistake to select Shapiro. It probably won't affect her electorally, but
better be right. Better win.
She better win, right? And I feel like with all that stuff coming out, like she's going to select him in the face of those, like, sexual harassment allegations from his office, not against him, but that he helped cover it up. That just seems wrong. Like, that just seems like a bad move regardless. Even if he were to be pro-Palestine, right? Like, that would be a bad move regardless.
Is I'm mainly annoyed at him for the Palestine stuff, but he has so many other liabilities, even if he covered up those. And it's like, why are we even entertaining this?
Right. Like, I have faith that, honestly, the negative partisanship about Trump could carry Pennsylvania on its own. And then we should also be thinking about expanding the map into other areas where Shapiro may not have the strength that he does in Pennsylvania. I'm honestly praying that they're hyping up the speculation about Shapiro just to juice the numbers in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Which would be smart.
That would be smart. And to also... give us a win.
Yeah,
it's
right.
not like when you present like a few options and one is just like absolutely horrible.
Right.
Like, I hope I don't get that one.
Well, it's like Walz on one side, Shapiro on the other, and if she selects Bashir, it's like, okay, everyone's happy.
You did the psychology thing on us, I'll take it.
Yeah, right. Shucka Darns says the Adam Ant song "Wonderful" was about Heather Graham, and it truly is wonderful. Left is best. Pina Colada, Michael used to say things in a way that normal people can understand them, and calling the Republicans weird is a perfect example of that. It's resonating because it is simple, true, and obvious. Agreed. I love the weird stuff. I hate the Project 2025 thing. It's like, just say what's in Project 2025. Why are you making people Google something and do a second step with your political messaging? It just feels like a holdover from the Biden campaign when he couldn't communicate, so people would have to Google. to understand what they were up against.
Remember at the debate when he said Google Project 2025 and the Democrats hadn't squatted those for search results for ads yet? That actually happened. Like, what was he doing? What was Biden
the Biden
doing?
campaign never happened.
Did it ever even start?
That's the thing. I mean, when you hear these reports about how she was across this stuff, you have to wonder. I know it's uncouth for people, and we don't have the facts. So I'm just speculating. I'm putting this out there, but
and we don't want to minimize his responsibility, but
we don't. But some things felt against his own self-interest. You know, like especially the stuff with Israel. He's the biggest Zionist ever, but having himself contradicted over and over, him by Netanyahu, him earnestly believing that he saw the beheaded babies when even Israel said that was a lie.
Denying the Hamas statistics.
Again, don't want to take away from his culpability, but we have to ask some questions, I think, about that.
Was he, were they ghost riding the whip?
Yeah.
That was already a Zionist whip to begin with.
Commie Tree, I think oh wait, I already read that one. And majority enthusiasts. Harris seems like she's been too busy releasing Russian hostages, but, you know, an opinion on the Olympics is so much more important. Yeah.
It's embarrassing that JD Vance tweeted about that yesterday. And now all of a sudden, even Karini herself is like, I was a bit too dramatic.
Right.
You know, I just lost on the world stage. I didn't handle myself well.
Mang Tang says, fun fact for J.K. Rowling and all the other transvestigating psychos out there, this Italian boxer was participating in the Olympics. Let me repeat that. The effing Olympics with the best athletes on the planet. She wasn't fighting against another boxer. She was fighting the boxer.
I genuinely think, like, I mean, I mentioned this before, but my high school had won 10 straight North Dakota State championships in girls basketball. Largely because of two sisters who slightly overlapped, but like they dominated physically in a way that, like, I do think if you showed enough of like women dominating other women in sporting contexts, and you suggested that, hey, there might be something fishy going on here, you'd have all these people biting immediately and transvestigating those women immediately.
Yep. Freighter 12, are the TERFs about to discover the difference between binary and... Oh, wait, I already read that one. All right, 5 more, and then we'll get out of here. 9 to 5, just sitting in Pittsburgh, devastated by a possible Shapiro pick. Don't be devastated yet.
Hey, I mean, for you, if they pick him, it gets him out of Pennsylvania.
Right. Mark Monkey, my favorite thing about the boxer thing is they will simultaneously claim men can't get pregnant, but she can actually get pregnant and they still call her a man.
She's
so
a
what is
birthing
it
person.
Just? Yeah, right. They're twisting themselves into knots over this and just proving that transphobia has always been based in misogyny.
And just basic ignorance.
Yes, also racism too. Infinite buffering. Jesse Waters is so right. I'm struggling to pay my mortgage and can't afford prolonged medical treatment. But the thing I care about most is what Harris thinks about foreign athletes' physiology. Unionized Penn. Shapiro volunteered to be in the IDF. I was seeing that just now.
I saw that, yeah.
Disgusting.
And he wrote some crazy stuff in the 90s saying, you know, just Palestinians essentially not capable of peace.
Is that called race essentialism?
I think that is literal colonial racism there by a governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro.
Okay, 3 more. Nasty question said, I wanted to get this in yesterday's Bill Maher segment. I have a friend who works as a dancer at an upscale gentleman's club in a major U.S. metropolitan area. She told me about the night Bill Maher came in and was escorted to a VIP area, and the dancers who weren't already with their other customers were brought up to do a lineup in front of him, not normal protocol, and he picked the smallest, youngest looking one, I'm taking a screenshot, of the whole dozen to take to a private area for a few hours. Thank you, nasty question. I'm just putting that in a folder.
What's that David Lynch show? Twin Peaks.
I haven't seen Twin
There's
Peaks.
something like that there too. I have to rewatch it.
JD Panst says, hi crew, I've been in and out. Do forgive me if you covered this, but have you covered the owner of Cross and his racist Karen moment, as well as the Mr. Beast situation with his leaked Discord messages? No, we have not. I haven't even heard of such
I don't know
thing.
what that is.
There is so much news right now, so it's hard.
I can say, unless Mr. Beast is working with either of the major political parties, I don't think we'll be making time for a lot of Mr. Beast content.
Yes, that's fair to say. Cattletown Napper says, as someone who just left teaching high school, grace-rated alliance or equivalent still exists, though here in the South they are under attack. And the final I am of the day. 502 Drew, my wife had a family member telling her yesterday that a trans woman was competing in the Olympics. These people never bother to actually verify anything past what Fox News tells them. I'm not sure how we improve on it when most people don't care to educate themselves. Well, 502 Drew, you should read Edinger Mentum's piece about the electoral history of transphobia and just at least hope and look at the evidence that this kind of stuff just stays in right-wing circles and does not have mass appeal.
Yeah, it's a rind of hysterical reactionaries.
There we go. All right, guys, appreciate you all. Great week. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to be off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, taking a little bit of a break.
Enjoy your break.
Thank you. So I will be back on Thursday, but Sam will be back on Monday, and we will see you then.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth